We're going to call the meeting to order, the continuance of the Marion County Planning Commission meeting from last night regarding case number PC-19-01. To start things off, we're going to do a roll call again. Dwight Fleming.
Here.
Glenn Thiessen.
Here.
Brad Banneker is absent. Derek Belton is here. Dwayne Baer.
Here.
William Kropa.
Here.
Jim Schmidt.
Here.
Mel Fleming is recused from this meeting. Kathy Enlow.
Here.
Our administrator, Sharon Olmstead.
Here.
Our recording secretary, Brandon Meyerhoff.
Here.
Our consultant, Russ Avey.
Here.
And our legal counsel, Pat Hughes. We're going to get back into the public comment here shortly. I first wanted to review a couple of things for somebody that maybe wasn't here or somebody that may have forgot from last night. We hope that we can get through this tonight. If not, we have the opportunity to have a third meeting. We'll just see how the evening goes. We ask that everybody is considerate of that in their presentations. Please direct your comments towards the board from the podium at your time of speaking. We will ask you each to state your name and your address and whether you reside within the footprint or not. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Your time will start after you have given your name and address. We have a timekeeper in the front row up here. She will raise her hand at 4:30 and she will stand up at 5. You will have one opportunity to speak. If you spoke last night, you are not allowed to speak tonight. We have the list from last night. We will put it back there on the table. We ask, there is a second line for tonight's speaking. We ask that you sign it as you come up to speak or before you speak while you're waiting there. If you signed it last night but did not speak, if you would please cross your name out so that we have the record of which night you spoke on. Unless somebody has something else to add, I think we're going to start with Quentin with your video from last night, and then we will proceed as we did last night.
My name is Quentin Clark. I reside at 471 160th Hillsborough, Kansas. Wanted to speak on this last night, but we were having audio problems with the video, so I couldn't do that. But this little video is just kind of an explanation of a neighbor Midwestern state and what they've seen with regards to the economics, how wind energy has affected them, their economy, and also emissions produced within that state. Thank you.
Minnesota blows. Actually, Minnesota is a beautiful place that is home to a lot of wonderful people. But state politicians are blowing billions of dollars on wind power and getting next to nothing in return except higher electricity costs for ratepayers, while lining the pockets of some well-connected special interest groups. The whole fiasco is discussed in detail in a new report by the Center of the American Experiment. Several years back, state leaders decided that it would be politically beneficial to them if the land of 10,000 lakes cut greenhouse gas emissions. The plan for achieving this goal was to erect thousands of industrial wind turbines. When this love affair with wind energy began, the people of Minnesota were paying some of the lowest electricity rates in the nation, almost 20% less than the national average. But as more turbines began spinning, that price advantage started shrinking. By early 2017, for the first time, Minnesota ratepayers were paying more than the national average. For this privilege, Minnesota spent an estimated $10 billion on wind turbines and billions more on upgraded transmission lines. If Minnesota had simply kept its historic electricity price advantage, ratepayers would have saved an estimated $4.4 billion over the last 7 years, or roughly $1,500 for a family of 4. Let's assume some people in Minnesota are okay with spending billions of dollars on wind power so they can feel good about substantially lowering greenhouse gas emissions. Except, that's not what's happening. From 2005 to 2014, Minnesota's carbon emissions dropped by 6.6%. However, in this same time period, America's emissions dropped by 9.3%, about 40% more than Minnesota's. In fact, the state's CO2 emissions from the electric power sector in 2014 were the same as in 1990, long before the state began investing enormous amounts of money into budget-busting turbines. There are quite a few reasons why Minnesota's big wind spend is failing so catastrophically. For example, most citizens are unaware that the electric grid must match supply and demand every second of the day. This means that wind energy's inescapable chronic intermittency is a major problem. When the wind slows down or stops, another energy source, typically coal or natural gas, has to produce more electricity so the lights don't go out. Having extra power capacity from natural gas and coal on standby is an expensive duplication of infrastructure. And wind has another big problem. It tends to produce the most output when it's needed least, and the opposite is also true. In Minnesota, the peak of electricity demand comes in August, the month when the wind doesn't blow very much. Then there's the problem of location. The electricity is needed for the Twin Cities in the southeast part of the state, but the wind blows hardest in the western and northern regions of Minnesota, so connecting the wind turbines to the electricity users has resulted in billions of dollars spent on new and upgraded transmission lines. I know what you're thinking. Why are Minnesota's politicians doing this to their citizens? Well, follow the money. Big wind companies make huge profits taking advantage of generous federal subsidies and tax credits. Big wind's lobbyists spend a lot of time making sales pitches to state legislators. And exactly how many lobbyists are representing the interests of Minnesota ratepayers? That's right, not a one. Hey Minnesotans, when will you start demanding that energy policies be based on science and not be written by special interest lobbyists? Power on, America.
I wanted to remind the board, if you have any questions for any public comment, feel free to ask at any time. Is there anybody ready to speak? Have you signed the list? It should be on that table. I guess I'll ask if there are available chairs. Please feel free to fill those chairs while others are speaking.
My name is Nick Peter. I live at 1374 Quail Creek.
You'll have to hold it real close to you.
My name is Nick Peter. I live at 1374 Quail Creek. This is a county plat map with the current CUP drawn on it. I have highlighted several important things. First, the blue shaded area represents landowners just outside the footprint who are opposed to the wind farm. The black line is the border of the CUP. You can see how it has been gerrymandered to avoid including non-participants, but at the same time often encircling them. This is an attempt to exclude opposing voices as they are exterior to the boundary. The red areas are people trapped in the CUP who are opposed to the turbines. Next, the yellow area are owners that have leases but may or may not have turbines on their property. You can also see that there are yellow areas with red hash marks that make them appear orange. These are also owners that have leases on their property, but these people don't live within the footprint. Indeed, many live in other cities and even out of state. We call these absentee owners. From this map, I've compiled a list of landowners that have leases within the CUP area. This is the list. 2 pages. There are around 80 listed, but notice I have highlighted the list. Again, the orange area denotes landowners that don't live in the footprint, many not even in the surrounding area. These people don't have to worry about living with the turbines. The green area denotes landowners that don't have turbines. Finally, the yellow again are landowners that will have turbines in and live in the footprint, a total of 15. We're pitting neighbor against neighbor and changing the face of our county for the rest of our lives for the sake of 15 landowners and the enrichment of expedition wind at the expense of all the people in the area. This is what we see and hear every day just outside our front door. This is why we bought our land, why we moved here to Marion County to build our dream home in the country. This is the fruit orchard we planted and have grown for 10 years now. Many of these trees I grafted myself from trees from our family farm. Now here is our new home that we've started to build on the land here in Marion. This is a picture of whooping cranes taken a couple of years ago just across the road from our house. They were here for 2 weeks. You could see them every day out our kitchen window. This will be the site of 2 wind turbines. Mr. Pellstrom told us that they had an environmental impact study done. Did that tell you about the whooping cranes? Now I want you to hear from former Governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, and what he has to say about the wind turbine industry.
We made a mistake, potentially $1 billion mistake. When I served as governor, I signed a bill that was supposed to jumpstart the wind industry, help the state, and create jobs. It didn't happen. This is a calamity for taxpayers. Corporate welfare of the worst kind. We are on the hook to write blank checks to mostly out-of-state and foreign wind investors, all funded by you, the taxpayer. It cost us over $120 million last year alone. Money for schools, for teachers, for kids. All gone. As your former governor and a proud citizen of Oklahoma, I ask that all of us work together to end this now. Together, we must protect the future of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Whoever's next, as long as you remember to sign the list up there.
Hello, my name is Darrell Brewer. I reside at 129 West Santa Fe in Marion, Kansas. I do not live within the footprint of this turbine deal. We had the experience of getting to work for Rez up on the Diamond Vista project. It was very good for our business. It was very good to watch what happened in Tampa as far as monetary values that went through that city. A lot of that downfalled and trickled to Marion and Marion Auto and Rod's Tire and Midway Motor and several other businesses. I wasn't the only one that got money from that. The other thing I would like to mention is the safety standards up there. Working for Rez was first in the business. They've got a list of rules and regulations that you have to comply with on a daily basis. It's one and done. There is no seconds. It's very high proficient operation. Working for them up there was a blessing for us, and I think it would be on this one down here. We'd like to be invited to this one, but that's hearsay. I'd like to also mention that we got to go inside of a turbine once it was erected. There is more safety standards inside of one of those than is on a brand new combine. It's amazing to see the inside of one and be inside of one. It's just astronomically of how they've got them built.
So you don't mind I'm doing this?
I don't think that there would be any safety issues as far as to how they're built and fire protection. It's all there. The other deal would be, I had the pleasure of working out there with different landowners. Rez had expectations of what they wanted. E&L had theirs, but the landowners and the public was first every day. You could travel 35 mile an hour on any of the project roads. There were several roads you couldn't travel on. And some of them had signs on them that said $5,000 fine if you was on them. The vehicles had to be equipped with strobe lights, fire extinguishers, numbers. You had to have hard hats, safety vest every day. I just think that the safety standard for these wind people is very extreme. It's more than we deal with out there in the public on a daily basis, and you really have to second guess yourself every day to make sure you're not on that one and done list. I think that wind energy is a way to go, and yes, I support them. Thank you for your time.
My name is Byron Lang. I live at 36 Lakeshore Drive on the county lake out here, and I own some farmland. It's also within the footprint of this windmill project. I also want to say that my ground is on the edge of this project. The economic benefit is not that great for me. That is not the motivating factor for me being here, for voicing my being in favor of this. What is important to me is the future of Marion County, and also what I will call the big picture. I'm also a person that tends to focus on facts and to search those out. One of the things that is facing this county and facing all of us is population decline. It's a fact that in the last 100 years that our population has declined steadily and continues to do so. We're declining at a rate of 5 to 6% every year. Now, to put that in perspective, if you look out across this audience, in 2 to 3 years, the attendance, equivalent of the attendance of this meeting, are going to leave Marion County. Now, I say leave, that's net. They're either going to die or they're going to move out. Yes, there's some people moving in. The net change in the next 2 or 3 years is what you're looking at in front of you. That translates into less and less and less pockets to pay taxes. Now, on the other side of that, our expenses are not declining. We still have the same amount of roads, we have the same schools, we have the same emergency medical needs. Our expenses keep going up. That's not a very good business model. I was in banking for 35 years, and if you walked into a bank with that business model and you said that all of my revenue sources are steadily decreasing and all of my expenses are steadily increasing, they would laugh you out the door. And we have no plan in place to address this. The only plan and the only avenue that our commissioners have is to continue to raise taxes. My question is how much, and we're 90-some% dependent on agriculture in this county. That's no big secret. How much can the agricultural sector bear in this county? Last night, Don and Joel talked about opportunity. We have an opportunity to bring a revenue source into this county. And I would also say that I don't think it's a secret. There's not a lot of opportunities. There's not a lot of businesses asking to move into this county. It's more the other way around. And I think it's also fair to say that if any large businesses were looking to come in, they would be looking for tax abatements, not an offer to share with the county. We have an opportunity to bring a business into this county that's going to bring revenue into this county, that's going to benefit every single person in this county. It's going to benefit every single person. It's going to give our commissioners a plan for the future that they can start building on, and a plan that includes something besides raising taxes. I'm obviously in favor of this, and I hope you give your approval to it.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. First of all, I know others have mentioned this, but appreciate everyone's time. I know the committee gets paid big bucks to do this, so thanks a lot. And I know the commissioners have quite a task, and Sharon too, because I mean, even though there's some compensation, it's a lot of work, and this is probably not one that everyone wanted. So appreciate your time. My name is David Marsh. I live in Minnow Township, and I have just a bit here I want to read to you. I entitled it Soul Searching, Do the Right Thing, and Have a Good Heart. It seems the main theme from the wind company and their lessees is the money. How much money does everyone get over 30 years? The numbers seem staggering. How can anyone in their right mind pass up such a windfall? Pun intended. Well, let's look at what really happens. It has been rumored that the folks in the northern Marion County are getting close to $15,000 per turbine per year on their leases. With Diamond Vista, or should I say Trade Winds, or whoever is now the lessor. I don't know who it is now. Those type numbers have been mentioned elsewhere in the nation. Okay, $15,000 price of a used car for a year. The folks in the southeast part of the county via Expedition Wind are said to get about a third of that amount, or about $5,000 per year per turbine. Okay, 1/3 of the price of a used car. So this is to be an economic boon for Marion County. Remember that typically only 20% of the lessees live within the footprint or even within the county or the state. The economic multiplier gets nullified with this happening, and we all know that there is no real financial obligation from the wind company, whomever that may be, as the companies are corporately layered and it's sold and resold to perpetuate the tax breaks. There may be a token effort via the payment in lieu of taxes program, and some of you might have heard that. It's called pilot payment in lieu of taxes. It's not an obligation, it's just what they choose to give to the counties or the schools or whatever charitable organization they deem worthy. But it's strictly voluntary and pittance of what would really be due if they paid their fair share through property tax, which was mentioned yesterday. But back to my point about doing the right thing. So if it's $5,000 or $15,000, so let's just get crazy. Let's say you get $50,000 per turbine. Does that make it right? How much money makes things right? We all know that economic feasibility for wind company is solely due to the federal and state government subsidies, i.e. corporate welfare program, which we just saw in the video, which we, the taxpayers, fund, by the way. Let's look at this argument considering other issues. Is stealing right if we get enough money for it? Is murder right if we get enough money for it? Is coveting right if we get enough money for it? Is lying right if we get enough money for it? If you are the editor of the paper, does that make it right? If it's not my backyard, does that make it right? Does a better speech or presentation make it right? If the government promotes it, does that make it right? If money has no limit, that makes it right. I ask you, are we worshiping at the foot of the idol of money via the Asherah pole? Self-interest of politicians via lobbyists, big wind investors who have no real interest in our community? We heard those big numbers yesterday, about 120 billion or something, I can't imagine. And absentee landowners seem to be dictating the future of our county. Is there no moral compass? Is greed and avarice the mantra of the day? What a sad day when we look only out for number one and disregard our neighbors, our environment, and the future lifestyle and the way of life of our Kansas prairies and farms. As it is said, wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it, and right is right even if no one is doing it. I'd urge you to do the right thing and keep Kansas and Marion County wind turbine free. Thank you.
Well, is this on? There we go. My name is Dennis Hedke. My address is 14211 East Whitewood Street, Wichita. I'm here not obviously as a resident of Marion County or within the grid that is proposed, but I want to issue my strongest support for the Marion County Wind Watch Coalition that has been studying this issue for a number of months and trying to get a good handle on what's really at play here. I'm going to try to focus on just a couple things, and this is conceptual. I have plenty of things that I'm going to hand out to the commission, but the estimated annual community financial impact for the proposed project in general terms, generic terms, not with the numbers. The numbers are going to be in this chart that I'll hand off to you, and you can reproduce it and look at that. But I also want to share some testimonies that come from other states. And so at the heart of all of this, the property values rights issue is very substantial. And this commission has the obligation to fully protect what is likely all of its citizens' most valuable asset. That's its property. Due to negative visual impact, residential property value will decline within at least a 2-mile radius of the project. As local property tax revenue is lowered due to the lost home values, all local property owners will end up paying a higher property tax rate to make up that difference. Some property abandonment in other projects has already occurred. So, first handout I'm going to hand off to you is, speaking of Lancaster County, Nebraska, board voted some months ago to require wind energy developers to place turbines at least 1 mile away from homes that aren't participating. And I'll just let you have that for review. In the state of Indiana, Kosciuszko County, on October 16th of 2018, that county adopted the, quote, safest wind ordinance in the state. County commissioners unanimously approved a new wind ordinance including a 3,960-foot setback to property lines, 0 shadow flicker on all non-participants, 32 dBA at property lines, that's speaking of the sound, pre- and post-construction well inspections, property value guarantees for post-construction, guarantees for everyone living within 2 miles of a turbine. Property owners within 5 miles of the project must be notified by the wind company of the project prior to the company getting leases signed, and industrial wind turbines are only permitted in heavy industrial zones because they are not agricultural. An appraiser looking at Adams County, Illinois, issued a report June 8th of 2010. And in this report, he cites, just going to summarize, a number of opinions and recommendations that he found appropriate for siting of wind turbines in that area. I'll let you look at those yourselves. Agricultural losses due to bats, of all things. It's well documented that turbines can kill large numbers of bats. And the main solution in the wind industry is to shut off the turbines. Bats are prodigious insect eaters. An individual bat can consume 1,000 insects an hour. When wind turbines come to a community, that bat population takes a substantial hit. Decreased bat population means many more insects, which results in a decrease in crop yields. Agricultural losses due to weather changes. Industrial wind turbines can alter the weather up to 14 miles away. Temperature and humidity can be adversely affected, and temperature and humidity changes can lower crop yields. In terms of health effects, you've heard comments that some have made, and I'm just going to say that I'm going to hand out these documents which relate to health effects for the commissioners' benefit. I think it's important for the commission to have access to as much context and a variety of information as possible, and I rest my case. Thank you.
Michell Timur, 1431 120th Street. I'm a local landowner and resident. My home and adjoining 80 acres are butted against the perimeter of the proposed Expedition Wind footprint. 4 of the proposed turbine sites are within 1 mile of my home. I am greatly concerned about the potential loss of rights as a non-participating resident and landowner. Residents within the Diamond Vista footprint in the northern portion of Marion County have indicated the significant burdens that living around wind turbines has created. One resident, Lane Dick, who has 5 wind turbines between half and 3/4 mile from his home, has voiced concern over the excessive noise caused by the close proximity of these wind turbines. Our current regulation allows turbines to be sited as little as 1,320 feet or 1/4 mile from existing residential structures and as close as 500 feet from non-participating property boundaries. The ISO standard for community noise development in rural areas identifies a daytime limit of 35 decibels, an evening limit of 30 decibels, and a nighttime limit of 25 decibels. To help understand the meaning of sound measured in decibels, consider this. An increase of 10 decibels is perceived by the human ear as twice as loud. This CUP proposes a maximum decibel level of 50 when purely measured at the closest exterior wall of occupied residences of non-participating parties within the CUP. What does this mean? This means that the proposed allowable noise limit at the wall of my home is 6 times louder than the ISO nighttime recommended limit. What about the rest of my property? Must I accept the fact that I may no longer be able to enjoy the outdoor space of my property? Why aren't the noise limits applied on property boundaries? Do my property rights change based on the type of structure I have built upon it? Do I not have a right to be protected from the effects of wind turbines on the entirety of my property? Must I really be forced into my home to escape the noises of neighboring wind turbines? This must be corrected. The Acoustic Ecology Institute identifies a distance of over 1 mile as the required distance from a wind turbine for noise limits to drop into the 30 to 35 decibel range. That range is still above the ISO recommended noise limits for nighttime hours. The Expedition Wind CUP includes a noise study showing how this will affect non-participating receptors. They define a receptor as a sensitive location. Their study shows that 55% of non-participating receptors will experience noise levels above the previously mentioned ISO standard. If that study evaluated noise levels at property boundaries, I would suspect the number of affected receptors to be significantly higher. Appropriate setbacks from property boundaries must be implemented to reduce the burden that non-participating landowners must assume. What about the property value of my home? If this proposal is approved, will anyone be willing to purchase my home? Let this statistic speak for itself. Within the proposed Expedition Wind footprint between Pawnee and Mustang Roads, this is the area closest to my home, there are 28 existing residential homes. Of those 28 residences, only 7 have chosen to participate in this lease. Just 25% of these homeowners are willing to be surrounded by wind turbines. Let me clarify that again. There are far more residential homes within this area that have chosen not to participate than those who have. One local homeowner who lives over a mile outside of the proposed footprint has already had potential homebuyers refuse to even look at their home when the possibility of the wind farms was mentioned by their realtor. Marion County Planning Zoning Board members, thank you for your time. As one of the many non-participating property owners here tonight, I urge you to implement setbacks, an absolute minimum of 3/4 mile from all non-participating property boundaries. I trust that you will hear these facts and concerns and will make the choice to stand up for non-participating property owner rights. Thank you.
My name is Keith Harder. I live at 218 South Lincoln in Hillsborough. We do have property in the footprint. However, we do not live in it. The substance of these comments are in a letter to the editor in the Hillsborough Free Press this week. My wife Judy and I are submitting a slightly expanded version of that letter now for the record of this hearing. We sincerely wish that we didn't have to be having this hearing. For one thing, it's divisive, pitting friends and even family members against each other. For another, I don't particularly like turbines on the horizon. They are majestic in a way, but nothing improves on an unimpeded view of a Kansas sunset. For another, the risks that we have been hearing about are concerning. Some are more plausible than others to my ear, but they should not be scoffed at or dismissed. The economic benefits are real, but I think can be easily overstated. And turbines will make farming more difficult, like oil wells and terraces before them. But still, we support the wind farm application because of the effects carbon-based emissions are having on the environment, and because of the importance of our world moving away from carbon-based energy. In our view, the potential risks to our health and wildlife and convenience and way of life posed by this wind farm pale in significance to the risks posed by the impact of carbon-based emissions and climate change. Just ask those already being impacted by rising sea levels around the world. We want to be part of the solution by making our land available for renewable energy. We believe our children and grandchildren and future generations will be glad we did, and will be glad if you can see your way to approve this application.
Life is a choice. My parents, of blessed memory, chose to name me Cheryl, and I spell it C-H-E-R-Y-L. 45 years ago, I chose to marry David Marsh, so my name is Cheryl Marsh. 17 years ago, we chose to move to a country home between Gossel and Hillsborough. Yes and yes, life is a choice. The 9 of you on the Planning and Zoning Committee, which was created for the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of Marion County, and the 3 Marion County Commissioners have a choice to be made. And I misspoke right now because one gentleman recused himself, and I would like to ask the committee if there's anybody else that has a lease by any other wind company around here. So
I have a lease, but it will not impact my views on this particular application in front of us.
Okay. I find that hard to believe, and I'm wondering why you didn't recuse yourself because of what you just said.
Because of what I just said, it will not impact my opinions on processing this.
Okay. Well, thank you. And that's for the record, I guess. I am here in opposition to the industrial wind turbines in all of Marion County, and especially this one proposed by Exhibition Wind Company. I will say that David and I went to Reno County's hearing, and many of you same people are there for Next Era, and now you're here for Exhibition Wind. So I think that needs to be brought out, how you are connected. So I no longer call them wind farms because from the previous numbers and information you've been given in the testimonies here tonight and last night, They are not farms because they grow nothing except strife among neighbors and families. Who is your neighbor? We are all neighbors, and we're called upon to help each other out. May I present an article from the Kansas Country Living magazine dated March of 2019. I offer this quote by Kansas Governor Laura Kelly as she speaks of our youth moving out of the state. Quote, "All Kansans should be concerned with the state of our rural communities, that as rural Kansas goes, so goes the urban areas of the state." Again, many choices. You saw the Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating, his quote, "I signed wind industry tax breaks and I was wrong. It was simply a mistake. Tax credit has warped into a scam costing taxpayers millions to the detriment of other publicly funded services." Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Donald Trump, stated on April 4th, "If you have a windmill on your yard, congratulations, your property just went down 75%. Now, we all know, we consider the sources. He is a businessman, he's out there and he's going to say those things, but he is also a good businessman and he's a good leader, so I wanted to share that with you. 90 to 100 turbines are proposed. 80 leases have been signed, and I might be off on some of these numbers. Of the 80 leases, 60 of them are absentee owners. Plus the non-participants, like we heard of just lately in the footprint. 18 landowners live in the immediate area, and only 8 is what I come up with. Landowners actually reside in the footprint. 8 people are going to benefit from this. Well, no, they'll all benefit, they think, from their money. But in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus says, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" Marion County does not need exhibition wind, but exhibition wind needs Marion County. The tree removal is brought up. When we moved here 17 years ago, they always said, "Don't ever cut down a tree in Kansas." But they do. Construction goes on 24/7. The wind company is nowhere to be found for road maintenance after the fact from up north, I've heard, because they've sold to a new company, layer down, layer down. Okay, and I heard that. So that's good. I wanted to say one more thing. The whooping cranes we heard about. Wind companies say that they can stop the wind turbine remotely via live data. Does that really happen? What else can they detect of us on our own property? Is that scary to anybody else? I would ask you to enjoy this analogy of why the banana split. And it's just a little book, and I think this will lighten the load a little bit. This is my visual aid. It's a T-Rex. When Rex came to town, everybody looked at his huge head high in the air and at his large sharp teeth.
I'm going to interrupt you. If you could wrap it up, we'd appreciate
I will.
it to
Thank
continue
you.
on.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that that's why the banana split peeled out and slipped away. So thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
I am Virginia Skinner. I have a farm and a veterinary clinic within half a mile of the footprint. I've spent the last 3 weeks going around and talking to my neighbors. to find out exactly how they feel, and this map, which is not very large, has red circles that show the people that I've had a chance to talk to who are opposed. I'm sure there are many more that I haven't gotten to talk to. Okay, you can just, thank you. We have heard expert testimony that industrial wind turbines are not a danger to health. Many studies were cited, I guess last night, I wasn't here. However, there are equal amounts of studies and data that show wind turbines do create significant health problems. From the journal Noise and Health, industrial wind turbines are a new source of noise in previously quiet rural environments. Environmental noise is a public health concern of which sleep disruption is a major factor. To compare sleep and general health outcomes between participants living close to industrial wind turbines and those living further away, participants were enrolled in a stratified cross-sectional study involving 2 rural sites. Questionnaires were used to collect information on sleep quality, daytime sleepiness, and general health, together with psychiatric disorders, attitude, and demographics. Participants living within 4,500 feet of a turbine had worse sleep, were sleepier during the day, and had worse SF-36 mental component scores compared to those living further than 4,500 feet away. The conclusion, the adverse event reports of sleep disturbance and ill health by those living close within 4,500 feet to industrial wind turbines is supported. The current setback from residences in Marion County is only 2,000 feet. Number 2, from the Canadian Journal of Rural Medicine. If placed too close to residents, industrial wind turbines can negatively affect the physical, mental, and social well-being of people. There is sufficient evidence to support the conclusion that noise from audible industrial wind turbines is a potential cause of health effects. Inaudible, low-frequency noise and infrasound from turbines cannot be ruled out as plausible causes of health effects. Number 3, from the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization environmental noise guidelines provide strong evidence that noise is one of the top environmental hazards to both physical and mental health. Compared to previous WHO guidelines on noise, there are 5 significant developments in the 2018 version, one being inclusion of new noise sources, namely wind turbine noise. In other words, the World Health Organization is recognizing noise as a top environmental hazard and has included wind turbine noise as a new environmentally hazardous noise source. These are just a few studies indicating that wind turbines do create a significant risk to public health. One of the mandates of the Planning and Zoning Commission is to protect the health and well-being of the residents of Marion County. As industrial wind turbines do pose a significant health risk, they should not be allowed in the county. People have stated we already have traffic, machine, and transport noise. However, just because we are already polluting the soundscape does not make it right, does not mean we should add to it, particularly in rural areas where there is relatively little consistent sound pollution. There are many industrial wind sites in the country. However, as the industry grows, so does awareness of the problems surrounding turbines. That is why we are seeing such an increase in opposition to new projects across the country. Marion County is not a good footprint for this project. There are many residents within the footprint that would be adversely affected. At the very least, we should consider mile setbacks from the property lines of residents.
Hello, thank you. My name is Linda Brewer. I live at 129 West Santa Fe in Marion. I do not live in the footprint of the wind farm. As you heard earlier, my husband spoke. I've heard a lot of different things from a lot of different people, different opinions. The one thing that has caught my attention the most is the lady from the Audubon Society last night. I love nature. I love animals. My husband and I had the privilege of working for the RES company when they were installing the wind turbines. They have such strict rules and regulations on anything you can think of. I mean, when we went to work for them, we had to go through a 4-hour safety class just to work for them as contractors. And it covered everything from spilling a cup of oil out of your vehicle to stopping and having to do management cleanup and hazmat cleanup for that 1 cup of oil. It was astounding at how they looked at the perspective of the land. They really do not want to disturb anything, land or animals. My son also worked for RES. One day, a passing car hit an eagle. Nobody that worked for RES or had any connection with RES done it. But a supervisor and my son seen it happen. They shut down production for a full day to save that bird. When we were on site, we were giving orders to watch for different animals, minnows, Topeka minnows, to make sure that we were not disturbing any kind of wildlife. I have been assured by different people here that Expedition Wind will be the same way. They do not want to disturb the land or the game that's out there. They want to preserve it. And 100 years ago, people never thought about put up an electrical pole and have wires running everywhere. Well, in my opinion, I'd rather look at a wind turbine than all them electric wires running everywhere. Thank you for listening to me.
My name is Jim Hoffman, and I live at 1550 Falcon, Hillsboro. And I'm going to play a song for you. If you're offended by some loud music, you might close your ears if you're offended. I'm going to play about 40 seconds of the song for you. That was Enter Sandman by Metallica. Some of you might like that song and might even want me to play more of it. Some of you might be thinking, turn that junk off. Mental health includes personal preferences, interests, thought patterns, joy, anxiety, depression, fear, annoyance, change. For those of you who liked it, most likely endorphins were released in the brain, giving the sensation of joy and pleasure. For those of you who are annoyed and bothered, your anxiety level is probably raised, which can be an increase in heart rate and raise in blood pressure, which are documented factors in cardiovascular disease. Our mental health, no doubt, is interrelated with physical health. Key facts from the World Health Organization on mental health. Mental health is an integral part of health. Indeed, there is no health without mental health. Mental health is determined by a range of socioeconomic, biological, and environmental factors. That song was an example of an environmental factor. In relation to the proposed wind farm, I am disappointed that mental health has not been addressed. The only health factor the wind industry will admit to would be annoyance. They don't take into consider a person's attitude, thought processes, or change in environment, or mental health. The World Health Organization recognizes that mental, physical, and social functioning are closely associated and interdependent. Quote, mental health, including emotions and thought patterns, emerges as a key determinant of overall health. Anxious and depressed moods, for example, initiate a cascade of adverse changes in endocrine and immune functioning and create an increased susceptibility to a range of physical illnesses. Again, mental health affects physical health. For those persons who find wind turbines distracting, annoying, disturbing, their health is affected. In the March 11th meeting, Pat Pelstring references the World Health Organization, quote, they list 313 different afflictions they fight worldwide, and wind turbine syndrome was not in there. Don't think that the World Health Organization is ignoring wind turbine issues. As the woman who spoke 2 times before me, she mentioned the same thing as the wind turbine noise as being one of 5 factors being added to their list in 2018 as a health issue. My recommendations to all of us: get a complete physical exam, make a diary of the things you like to do and why, note your sleeping patterns, note why you like living in Marion County, note any physical ailments, note hearing issues, document cell phone service, television service, note what wildlife you see and how often, road conditions, note dates and times of records. Don't exaggerate or embellish. Be honest and accurate. By the way, Metallica's Enter Sandman was not chosen randomly. This song was a favorite of the U.S. interrogators at the height of terror to sleep deprive, offend culture, and break down a person's mental health. Most of us didn't ask for this dilemma, and I feel for the planning and zoning in their decision. Though I do not live in the footprint, I am not in favor of the wind farm as we move to Marion County for its natural beauty. Thank you.
Everybody hear me here? My name's Jeff Sawyer. I live at 1426 Pawnee. I'm on the other end of Main Street from Eugene Just. Great man, anyway. When I bought my house, I knew there was a set of railroad tracks there. I knew it was going to be noise. I knew there was going to be trains. Had I known there was going to be windmills there, I would not have bought my place. I do fear that the property value will go down. It's a scary thought. It's my investment. It's everything my wife and I sunk everything into. But with that said, I have friends on both sides of this argument, very dear friends, that I want to see prosper. I know farming is kind of tight right now. It's a soft income. But I think what we should do, people of the board, we ought to put it to vote, take it back to our commissioners. Let the people in this community vote on it, nobody else. Win or lose, it's over with. But that's democracy at its best. Thank you.
Can I ask to reserve any comments or responses for the podium?
Mike Beneke. We reside at 2876 280th, outside the footprint. I have 2 business properties within the city of Marion. And I do live within the, I think, federal moratorium of the Flint Hills. So wind farms will never be in my backyard, would be my guess. This same board granted me a CUP 15 years ago. I think there's only 2 of the members today that granted me that. So not to issue somebody else, any other company or business within Marion County would be hypercritical, I think is the word. If we look at cattle grazing, I've grazed as many as anybody in the heart of the Flint Hills. How you get it burnt black, 4 weeks later, the Flint Hills green that comes, Crayola crayons can't duplicate. There's a spot on the middle Mulvane pasture, which is one of the highest spots out there. I hope to have some of my ashes put there if they follow my orders in time. Barbara Lips not only gave to the Mayo Clinic, she has an entire wing when she sold the Lips property to the Bass brothers. I doubt that our wind farm will ever be able to match that donation or give back to our community, but there are things that are possible. The other side of this same green grass in the wintertime at times is Cadillac pink, believe it or not. Going back to wildlife, I don't know that the 77 hailstorm, the extreme 79 blizzards that lasted for more than 40 days, 1980 winter, where it never got above freezing for 40 some days. The heat of 1980 diminished our wildlife. Even our own government took some of the last prairie chickens that survived all of this, trapped them and sent them to Illinois 2 years in a row. Why? I have no clue. Government at work, I guess. So Mother Nature will be harder on any wildlife than any wind farm, turbine. Last and not least, I've had bird watchers on my property. Always asked them to move on because they were sitting there with binoculars and cameras wondering, well, what are they spying on me for? The last would be the deer. I've hit 3 of them in the last 6 months. Just about clobbered one on the 13-mile road today. Coming back from Wichita with a load of feed in a semi. If a wind turbine would kill some of these deer, I'd be up for that. I am 6th generation. My kids are 7th, and my only grandson is 8th generation. I don't expect my 8th generation to ever come back to this county. I've made 4 trips to southern Texas, past several wind farms. I went for my daughter's wedding, the birth of my grandson, first birthday, second birthday. On this past trip was for the second birthday. We come back through West Texas, the hill country. It was something I wanted to see. What irritated me more than anything is you get in the heart of that hill country, there are homes halfway up these hills and probably $1 million mansion on the peak of it, but for me it ruins the view. These are probably tax-paying citizens, high-dollar homes, yet it ruined the view for me. As I sit in my hot tub, I hear the trucks and trains at Lincolnville 7 miles away. I hear the airplanes at 30,000 feet, but I don't not hear the wind turbines. I thank you for your time.
It was good to see Mike Hedke. We shared a cabin at Rock Springs Ranch for a week 50 years ago, and he was taller than me back then, too. My name is Evan Yoder. My wife Becky and I live at 1259 90th in East Branch Township. It's 1 mile west of Mustang, so we're not quite in the footprint. One of our sons and his family also live on another house on that farm. On what once was a nearly 500-acre dairy farm, due to financial issues in the early 80s caused by a drought and poor milk prices, my parents were forced to sell all but the 80 acres where we now reside. I understand the need to maximize income from these lands we live on and respect all those who are doing all they can to continue to call Marion County their home. I graduated from Peabody High School in 1976 with nearly 60 other fellow warriors. There's no question our population has declined for years. But after nearly 4 decades of helping educate children in the Hillsborough School District and sending our children to both the Peabody and the Hillsborough schools, here is what I can tell you. We have a crop of young adults, there are several of them in the audience today, many of whom I've known since their earliest years in school, who are now parents of their own. They return to this state, they return to this county, and are determined to keep these communities alive. This desire is clearly evidenced by the fact that the largest classes in the Hillsborough School District are in the elementary school. These young parents have energy, vision, things in Marion County. They want their children, and for many of us, our grandchildren, to see that Marion County can become a destination place in our state. How that will be achieved, I'm anxious to see what they can produce, but I have faith as an educator over all these years and all these kids that they will. So I ask you, Zoning Board, will our destiny be a county overrun with wind turbines on every horizon, catering to an aging population, as young people concerned with health and aesthetic issues raise their families elsewhere? The loss of these young people equates to fewer taxable properties, and while the wind companies are making payments to various entities currently, will this continue after the 10-year tax abatement? I'd rather rely on people moving back to our county. Or will Southern Marion County prove to be a holdout during this frenzied rush to build turbines before the tax credits disappear? Will Marion County prove to be the destination point for clean living in a pristine environment devoid of massive turbines, which at some point will prove to be obsolete, uneconomical, or neglected? Will these huge profit-based wind companies still be here to bail our grandchildren out when they need to be dismantled? During the building of the Diamond Vista Wind Farm, Hillsborough Elementary gained a total of 1 student for 3 months. He looked like the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, so we liked him. I know of one family who has elementary kids in our school who works for the wind farm. One, at the elementary school. I know the potential of our young people and have tremendous faith in the tools our schools are now teaching, which will allow more and more of our native born to stay and build a life in our community. Let that be our future. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Rogers, and I and my family, we reside in Moore Township of rural northwestern Marion County. Both my wife and I, my children as well, are free thinkers. We ask them questions, they ask us questions. They're not here, but if you have a chance to meet them, Lane, Logan, and Hudson, ask them what they think of wind towers, and they'll tell you the same thing that my wife and I will. We don't enforce our thoughts or our premonitions on them. We allow them to think and ask questions of themselves and of others. We do not rent or own land in the current proposed wind project. However, that does not delegitimize our concern with this project, a future project in this county or the county next to us, nor the potential impact of this commission's decision upon us with this specific project. My wife's a Marion County native. As for myself, I was raised in Saline and Ellsworth counties. I'm the 6th generation. My son's the 7th generation of our ranching family. We homesteaded Kansas in the Ellsworth County area, what is present day, before Kansas was even a state. Ellsworth, along with Lincoln County, as it was mentioned last night, and as a lot of you know, is the location of the Smoky Hill Wind Farm. That's been in operation since 2008. I was here last night and tonight. I've yet to hear anybody in this room, nay or yay, that has had a direct working relationship with any wind farm in the ag industry. We do. In those counties where we ranch, we do not farm, but where we ranch, we do not own a single piece of property that has an operating lease on it. That was by choice. We could see the writing on the wall with those that approached us. I have very close friends up there. I have very close family up there. I had opportunity to set down roots and start our arm of the business in Ellsworth County. I chose not to. My wife chose not to because of wind farms and the potential of them being there. We moved to this county before that project started. We currently lease properties that have wind towers on them. We have seen those contracts, now 11 years old. I imagine that most of your contracts are very similar in scope and in what they say. And in all honesty, they are not leases. They are easements that you are signing over to these people, and they will treat them as easements. You will lose rights to what you can and cannot do. But I'm not up here to help you exercise your due diligence. I'm up here to talk to the commission. We have properties that have not changed. They have not rejuvenated that we lease. 11 years down the road, the scarring of the land is still there, is still present. I can take you to our summer grass right now, and you can see a 6-inch height difference from where every piece of heavy equipment, dozer or crane, traversed, even to traverse properties of ours to access a wind tower pad on a neighbor's. Our landlords cannot they cannot make decisions, they cannot take action, they cannot do as they wish with their own properties in a multitude of ways because of what is stipulated in the easement that they signed. Unfortunately, they learned this after the fact. This has limited us in some decisions, it's limited them. Also in those easements, the operators, the developers, they dictate what we can and can't do as ranchers. The same with the farmer. When they're supposed to be in there, when they can't be in there, when their grazing season's supposed to start and end. Regardless of the lease that I have with that landlord, they trump it. Again, landlords losing their rights to do with their property as they wish, property owners losing their rights to do as they wish with the property. As I read through the current Marion County Wix article today, I read through it multiple times. The first section, and this is the current one, right off of Marion County's website, Section 27-101 states purpose and intent. The purpose of the overlay district is to ensure a regulatory means of facilitating wind energy development of a commercial wind energy conversion system within the unincorporated portion of Marion County by protecting the Wix developers' interest in unobstructed wind flow. The whole premise of the Wix program is to support the wind developer, not the landowner, not Marion County, not the citizens of Marion County. My interpretation of that statement, critical reading of it, I could not change it. Was the current WEC's regulation drafting assisted in any way by any potential wind developer? That's a question I asked directly to all of you that were involved with it. Because when I read it, it says the wind tower developers were involved in the development of that program, not the citizens of Marion County. Thank you.
Good evening. David Mueller, 3441 Mustang, Tampa, Kansas. I do not live in the footprint. I want to offer just some perspectives from two unique angles. First, I had the honor of sitting in your chairs for 12 years. 15 years ago, we were out on the frontier drafting those first regulations for wind energy conversion systems. At that time, we knew a lot less about turbines than you do now. So if you have complaints about the way we did our first draft, you can point them at me. But I do applaud you for updating as technology improved, as more information became available, you've updated the regs, and to be applauded for that. From that unique perspective, I'd ask you to pull out your factors that you make your conditional use decision on. You should each have a copy of the factors that you make your decision on tonight in your packet. One thing I did learn from all those years and sitting in that chair, it's hard to separate the emotional issues from the facts and the factors. By state law, you have to make your decision based on those 11 factors. And as you hear testimony and as you review the facts and issues, that's your guideline. That's what you have to follow to make your decision. And I strongly encourage you to use those factors in reaching your decision, and it'll make it a lot easier to work through that process. The Planning Commission has already approved 4 conditional use permits in this area. Those have held up. There has not been a challenge. Those have been approved, so we have a track record of approving those. The second unique perspective I'd like to provide is I get the dubious honor of being the landowner representative for Diamond Vista. So of the 150 landowners, it's my responsibility to convey their concerns to the owner, Anel, and work with Anel to provide solutions for those landowners. Trust me, I've heard every complaint, I've heard every problem, I've seen every response, I've sat through the management meetings, I've worked with the people from Anel, I've worked with the contractor, Rez. They sincerely try to do the best job they can. The focus is on the landowner. And I know there are a lot of landowners that will support me in saying that. It's not 100% perfect. There's issues when you have a $500 million construction project, a $500 million construction project. There's going to be issues. But they sincerely fought to keep landowner interests at the top of their list as they went through the construction process. I drive the site daily. I probably deal 8 to 10 hours every day out there on the sites under the turbines. There was a number of issues raised that if I could just give a quick response, that's just from my perspective. Crop dusters, I've seen a number of pastures sprayed. You know, the height of the blade is 50 or 70 feet. Crop dusters are usually at 20 feet. I've seen several crop dusters out doing pastures. Landowners have no restrictions on their ranges. They can burn pasture, they can spray pasture, they can treat their fields in any way they see appropriate. They have full access. They can use the access roads. That's a tremendous benefit to those of us that previously could not access pastures, could not access fields. We now have access to those areas. So there are a number of advantages to that. Ice throw, I was concerned about that. I did see that. But generally, the ice throw I saw was less than the height of the tower. And there is ice. I mean, there will be ice. But I've never seen it past about half the height of the tower, and that's just from my experience from the issues that we have had. Sound varies. Again, I live in the middle, Heart of Diamond Vista, there's a turbine a quarter mile away. So I sit on my front porch, I can see it. The sound varies. It's just like someone mentioned earlier about the train. One night it sounds like it's running through your living room. Next night you don't hear it, you don't notice it. Wind conditions, humidity, speed of the wind, there's a number of factors come into play on the sound issue. Wildlife, cattle, right up and around the turbines. One reminder to focus on the factors as you make your decisions. I know there were a couple of conditions that staff recommended. The FFA radar light, I know that's a very expensive process as you explore that issue. And the second one is the setbacks. We put a lot of time and a lot of effort. We believe that the setbacks that you have in place are adequate. If you remember the map at the beginning, you have the big area zeroed in. That's going to zero it in even more. So again, in closing, focus on the factors, making your decision, and appreciate your time.
I think I'm going to interrupt before you come up. We'll take a 10-minute recess and come back at 8:40. Thank you. As we were going.
My name is Stacey Jansen, and I live at 1544 Limestone. And we live 2 miles from the nearest proposed wind turbine. Tonight, I'm asking you not to approve this project CUP. Current setbacks don't protect landowners, they don't protect property value, and they don't protect the health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the people living in and around the project area. If we don't correct setbacks in the WEX regulations now, this fight will come back again and again. Counties all across the Midwest are approving reasonable setback limits in WEX planning and zoning regulations. Examples from just 2019 alone are in Monitor Township, Michigan, Ford County, Illinois, Burleigh County, and Commons County, North Dakota, and DeKalb County, Illinois. From the Paxton newspaper, it says, the Ford County Board made clear Thursday that its #1 priority in establishing new rules for wind farms is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens, and not to ensure more wind farms are built. The board voted 9-1 in favor of a proposal to restrict wind turbines from being built any closer than 2,250 feet from a property line. The measure is designed to protect rural residences from low-frequency noise and shadow flicker, among other nuisances that turbines can create. From DeKalb County, Illinois, their paper states that they recommended the turbine setback to stay at least 6 times the turbine's height away from neighboring properties. Planning and Zoning Board said a wind energy development company would work around those restrictions by proposing a wind farm with shorter turbines or seeking waivers from neighboring properties according to these recommendations. Every property owner in a project footprint. Participating landowners can then waive setback limits, and non-participants are outside of a reasonable annoyance zone. Health, safety, comfort, all the things that you regulate are mitigated when the company is forced to deal with everyone. The decision is no longer made by planning and zoning fully, but by the people living in the footprint and those that will be directly impacted by the development every single day for decades. I would also like to cite a research study titled The National Survey of Attitudes of Wind Power Project Neighbors. This was done by the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, published in January 2019, and it was funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, so it's very pro-wind. It says in the annoyance to sound section that a half mile away, 81% of respondents can hear the turbines at their home. Half mile, 56%. And 5 miles away, 16% can still hear the wind turbines at their home. They also measured it from inside the home, and everyone within a 5-mile radius reported that 10% could hear the wind turbines inside their home, and that's everyone in a 5-mile radius. Noise inside your home at 5 miles away or at any distance impacts residents. This is an undue tax on homeowners who weren't ever given the chance to fight for their own property rights, for their health, safety, and their welfare. They weren't compensated or given notice that this tax will even be put upon them. And noise is just one of the many concerns that this project brings. We've heard of a lot of others, including just the general danger of living around them. Vestas Wind Systems builds approximately 70% of turbines in operation. On page 3 of the Vestas Safety Regulations for Operators and Technicians Manual, Vestas personnel are instructed to stay away from a turbine by 1,312 feet unless necessary, and this is during normal operating conditions. It seems like in this process, the citizens of Marion County are the ones having to prove the ill effects that wind turbines cause. The burden of proof should be on Expedition to prove otherwise. I've also heard that you've been told you can't make a decision based off aesthetics alone, but our planning and zoning regulations already do so. Article 19 limits billboard height to 35 feet, but then in their purpose, it states that regulations are made to preserve and promote aesthetic quality in Marion County, and to preserve and improve the appearance of the county through adherence to reasonable aesthetic principles in order to create an environment that is attractive to residents and non-residents. And then, most importantly to me and my family, to safeguard and enhance private investment and property values. Article 3, we regulate the height of buildings to 35 feet and homes to 2.5 stories to retain the rural character of our area. And then the Kansas State Statute 12-755 states that the Planning and Zoning governing body may adopt zoning regulations which control the aesthetics of redevelopment or new development. We didn't have to prove that billboards or homes caused harm at a certain height. We just regulated their height and distance because we don't want them to interrupt the rural landscape or decrease the value of adjacent properties. Due to the wind farm's disproportionately large size, it's inconsistent with Marion County Comprehensive Plan and current zoning regulations to say yes to this change in land use. It's so massive and the impacts are so profound and permanent that they should not occur without the consent of all impacted parties. Increased and reasonable setbacks for both noise and distance would require Expedition to negotiate with all impacted citizens. It's fair and equitable and reduces community division. It would also take this decision off your shoulders and leave it with the people it directly impacts on a daily basis. And as you make your decision, I would ask yourselves this: are promised increases in revenue for a few landowners more important than our health, safety, and welfare? And are Expedition Wind's profits more important than the comfort and property value of families and generations to come who love and live in our rural community? Thank you.
Stacy turned it off. Is it on? All right, we're good. My name is Jeremy Lowen. I live at 1081 190th in Hillsborough. I'm a local farmer, engineer, and resident of Marion County. My family owns several tracts of land inside the Expedition Wind proposed footprint that we've chosen not to lease. Matter of fact, one of the tracts that we own is completely surrounded on all four sides by the leased property, but we didn't even receive official notice of this hearing tonight. Many of the non-participating landowners within the footprint were not notified, and we're told it's because Expedition Wind intentionally excluded us by not using legal parcel boundaries, but rather making sure their project boundaries stayed at least 1,000 feet away from outspoken non-participating landowners. Expedition Wind is intentionally trying to silence non-participating landowners with these tactics. We're even being told we may not be able to legally pursue a protest petition because we fall outside that 1,000-foot notification area. Is that necessary? Did we surrender our legal rights by simply choosing not to participate in this project? Now you're probably wondering what the map that I handed you is for. It's a map that Expedition Wind provided in their CUP. If you look at the page that's gray and white, it has a small number 1 in the top right-hand corner. You'll see a blue cross hatching around the perimeter and around the dark areas in the middle. Those areas are all of the non-participating landowners who have been approached by Expedition and chose not to participate. You might ask why that's important. Expedition Wind is aware that non-participating landowners far exceed the necessary 20% required for a protest petition, which would require a supermajority by the commissioners. Look at that map again. You understand why non-participating landowners have been so vocal in our rights and our need of protection by setbacks. Is it right for Expedition to discriminate against these people? Is Marion County willing to let that kind of discrimination take place? Do they have more right to pursue this project than local landowners have to stand against it? Is that how we do business in Marion County? Now let's move on. Let's take a look at the Marion County Comprehensive Plan that was updated in 2017. Chapter 8 of that document addresses land use. The goal and objective stated on page 3 reads as follows. Provide opportunity for the orderly and efficient development of land, which will achieve fiscally sound and environmentally safe county while maximizing compatibility among land use. It continues with objective C. Minimize land use incompatibilities and ensure that adjacent developments are comparable in density and quality, thereby providing for a smooth transition between land use. Objective D, coordinate future development with the physical environment, placing a premium upon developing in harmony with existing natural features. Objective E, discourage new strip commercial development that does not promote a unified, consistent manner. Individual lot development for single purposes that fail to coordinate with adjoining property development should be discouraged. Does this project fit the objective? Are these turbines harmonious with the existing natural features? Are we protecting the health, safety, and welfare of our residents? Let's take a look at the map I handed you again. Does that map indicate consistent land use? Does the footprint look harmonious, or does it look more like Swiss cheese? Take a look at the second page on the back. All of those white circles that you see, those are all the non-participating homeowners within the footprint. Expedition Wind, I think these non-participating landowners have already spoken magnitudes by not leasing with Expedition Wind. More specifically, Expedition Wind has failed to generate enough participating landowners within the footprint to make this project compatible with our comprehensive plan and a good fit for all parties. Flip that back over to the gray and white side. We've heard a lot about setbacks tonight. Now imagine a quarter mile or a half a mile setback around all of those dark shaded in areas. That would leave very little to no room left for a wind turbine to be sited, especially on the western front of that footprint. Is this footprint really a good fit for Marion County, or is this a last-ditch effort to salvage what's left of a wind project that started 10 years ago and has never been able to gain traction? Let's go back to the Marion County Comprehensive Plan one more time. The recommendation section at the end of Chapter 8, land use, reads as follows. The county should continually evaluate its zoning and subdivision regulations to assure the established zoning districts reflect actual land use in the rural areas. Maybe it's time we take our own advice. Marion County Planning and Zoning Board members, thank you for your time. As one of the many non-participating property owners here tonight, I trust you will hear these facts and concerns and make the choice to stand up for non-participating property owner rights.
Hear me? So, all right, my name's Chuck Seifert. I live at 2168 140th. Would be the east side of this thing, right straight across the road from the footprint. I have three main problems with it. I'm against it, of course. My main problem first is the promoter of the thing. Like I said, it's been going on for 10 years. Originally, they had a small area carved out just south of me. I was not able to have a generator. I'm sorry, I couldn't have a generator, but because it was a small area was carved out, I think to include mostly the promoter's land for sure. And that was the way it was at that time. I almost thought about putting one of them refurbished ones up from California just because I could, back then, but I was getting too old already. So that's my main problem with it. It's been promoted, pushed around, now they pushed the footprint a little further and a little further, and now it encompasses my land of Peabody. So that's my first reason for not liking it. The second reason is green energy. I'm sick of hearing about green energy. That's all we've heard about for 20 years. We're not in a crisis. We're not in global warming. We're not in any of that, in my opinion. And they're pushing the green energy. That's my first. That's my second. Third thing is I don't want to look at it. So I'll be short and sweet here. What I believe needs to be done so that you people don't have to make the hard decision, and so the three county commissioners don't have to make the hard decision. Let's put it on the ballot this fall with the county commissioners and let the people vote. We're in a democratic society, and let the chips fall where they may, and everybody should abide by that. And that would be the fairest thing as far as I'm concerned for everybody. Thank you.
Tom Britton. There you are. Testing. I'm Tom Britton. I live at 2194 130th, Flint Hills, Kansas. I have a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks. I live in the Flint Hills. I love the Flint Hills. There's been some discussion that I guess if I did live in the hills, I don't. Or I approached the commission here about 3 weeks ago, and I asked them, I said, why would you even consider putting giant windmills in the Flint Hills? And I really didn't get any answer. Randy Dalkey told me, he said, well, I wasn't here for some meeting or something, which I've been to all of them. But no, I don't, yeah. And as you can probably tell, I'm against them. Let me read this from, it's the Marion County Record by Adam Stewart, November 24th, 2010. Marion County Commission approved a conditional use permit Monday for a wind farm proposed by Rex Savage of Windborne Energy of Pearl, Florence. Marion County Planning Commission had recommended approval following a two-session hearing at the beginning of November. The Planning Commission received no unfavorable letters or public comments regarding the company's application. Now, one of the reasons why that was because we was kind of blindsided. We didn't know we had no chance to defend ourselves. Nobody knew what it was. A similar thing happened with Trade Wind. They went in there and they made their presentation, and then they tried to mitigate things as how they felt. Some unfavorable comments were made at Monday's meeting, however. Joy Watches lives in the wind energy overlay district that would include the project. She said she declined to lease to land to the project and opposed its approval. Attorney Angela Medatho represents Clay Watches, who recently purchased land in the area. Medatho said her client wasn't necessarily opposed to the development, but need more information, especially regarding transmission lines. Savage said the project will use an existing transmission line, which they say they're not going to do now. Attorney Pat Hughes spoke on behalf of the Robert Sellers family, who owns land near the project. He said there were two reasons they opposed approval of the project: the placement of the project and the process of the application. Hughes said its area in the tall grass prairie made it a threat to prairie chickens. Windborne's Energy preliminary bird study recommended further review, he said. If the project somehow drove prairie chickens populations low enough that they were declared an endangered species, the entire Flint Hills region would be affected, Hughes said. He also said the application didn't disclose necessary details. It was more of a concept than a plan, Hughes said. The applicant has come to you too early, he said. Hughes also said there was a corruption in the application process, with the company pledging funds to governed entities unrelated to the project. Now we have him here this evening, and I don't know how much he's costing us. I've got his bill. I've got what they call, we've been calling the bill, and some of the things that between Expedition Wind, 3 of 18 and 19, provide advice of tax exemption, respond to inquiry from Expedition Wind to protest petitions. Now what's up with that? You know, I mean, come on. And should have the other ones here somewhere. And then we have all these ones for like 20-some days. Conference with Sharon, review staff, and this with conferences with Sharon and Tina. It ends up being about $9,500. And then we have about the staff report, and that's really upsetting. And I spent about 5 hours on this staff report before you guys could even listen to it, or anybody even knew about it when you brought it up last night. Nobody had a chance to
Sir, can I ask you to direct your comments towards the application tonight and not the legal fees that have been discussed at a different time?
Yeah, you can ask. I'll tell you what, that's fine, I'm done.
Hello, my name is Steve Butts. I'm a owner here in Marion County property and 5 of the counties. And I do have a wind tower in Oklahoma. And it was a big mistake. And I can't, extend enough to you to put this to a vote. It's just really imperative that you make this a democracy and let the people vote. The only benefit I've seen to a wind tower is that, number one, the people putting it in benefit, and number two, it pits landowner against landowner. It pits people against people. It divides the community. So I'm not going to get up here and rant and rave about a bunch of things, but it's the smart thing for you commissioners to put this to a public vote. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why, is it on? Yeah. Why, after the tower was put on your property, are you so against it? What's your reasoning?
So many, first of all, the contracts, they didn't, and it may be the company we had, but they didn't honor a lot of the stuff in their contracts. And number two, they proposed the income we were going to get, that didn't come in. And number three, a majority of the neighbors, and it's in a community where there's not near the public as there is here in Marion County. It's a lot less people, and it's in Oklahoma, and it's out in the boondocks, but it still pits neighbor against neighbor because of the ones that do live there and the ones that don't want them. And then now they're going to remove their lease, and we're going to end up with a big old white dinosaur out there. What are we going to do with that thing? Who's going to come to try to remove the thing? So the company is the one that, and our taxes went up, and our property values went down. So I can't see any benefit to it except it causes a lot of controversy. Thank you.
My name is Glenn Litke. This is my wife, Sheila. We have a farm, or we farm and own productive crop ground in the proposed footprint. We join those here who are not in favor of adding wind farm number 38 to this lovely state of Kansas. I'm sorry I was late to this meeting. I was busy making my money the good old-fashioned way. I was on my soybean planter, earning it. The same way 4 generations before me of Litkes, Weenses, Thiessens, and Bullers have that immigrated here in 1874. The group was a little larger here last night, but this is really a good representation here tonight. Last night I was planning to get up, but I didn't get my chance because it went so late. I was going to get up and say, boy, this is quite a packed outhouse. I mean, a packed out house. You see how you can say two different things with the very same words? People that know me know that I'm not in the habit of either telling or laughing at potty jokes. But listen to those words. This is a packed outhouse. No, this is a packed out house. I'm using the very same words, but there's two completely different messages. We have to be careful that when this company comes to us and starts using words, that we're understanding what they're saying. Just the name wind farm is a problem. Farm suggests efficiency and productivity, and there's a lot of credible study out here that says this proposed wind farm, not necessarily so. Planning and zoning members, I do not envy your responsibility, at least not for this far-reaching decision you're faced with. This concern and passionate controversy is pitting neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother, church member against church member, and some of the animosity already expressed has crossed lines of appropriateness. That's unfortunate. As I have stated at an earlier public meeting in this room, I am personally committed to foster and maintain healthy relationships over whatever decision is reached. No one wins, either in a family or a community, when we can't get along together. The owners and investors of Expedition Wind live out of state for the most part, and as they answered the question raised at an earlier public meeting, do not themselves live in the middle of 98 wind turbines. And I seriously doubt they would be willing to build their $500,000 retirement home in its shadow and put up with red blinking lights bouncing off their bedroom mirrors all night long until kingdom come. They did not wake up one morning in bed and say, honey, I just realized I have a passionate concern for the economic well-being of a place very remote from here. It's called Marion County, Kansas. And I'm committed to work, sweat, and sacrifice to help those dear people crawl out of the poverty they're experiencing. Excuse my cynicism, but most of the people present in this room have grown up with the teaching and the understanding of the value of an honest, earned dollar. We have all experienced the great satisfaction in the material reward of a solid, healthy work ethic. The strength of this county we live in was not built on some get-rich-quick mentality. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Let's be careful not to let the flashy dollar signs of their persuasive, crafty presentations and sometimes questionable sales pitch blind us to the reality of the heavy price we'll have to pay, represented in the sacrifice of the preservation of our aesthetic, historical, and cultural values, serene rural lifestyles, and appreciations. I have nothing against green energy. I like to breathe clean air like everyone else. But if I go from hugging trees to hugging 500-foot industrial wind turbines, I might want to calculate how much fossil fuel was used to design, engineer, build, sell, transport, erect, maintain, and yes, eventually decommission. We are two people. We wrote this together. We are two people.
I understand you're two people, but our request was that two different speakers for their 5-minute time.
All right, you want to finish this for me? All right.
I like to breathe clean air like anyone else. But if I go from hugging trees to hugging 500-foot industrial wind turbines, I might want to calculate how much fossil fuel was used to design, engineer, build, sell, transport, erect, maintain, and yes, eventually decommission these huge structures. My hugging grip may loosen a bit. And I understand there are already 37 wind farms in Kansas alone. That's a lot of tower hugging. These companies are preying on the gullibility of a community like ours. And because of the huge profit going to these out-of-state investors, I fear they won't be satisfied until every square mile of our beautiful countryside and productive crop ground is cluttered with these monstrosities. To the planning and zoning members and commissioners, you have been entrusted by the people in this county, either by election or appointment, to make the tough decision at hand. Your decision may not be between what is right and wrong, but a much tougher one, a decision between what would seem good for the county and what would be the best for Marion County. I trust that you will have the wisdom to choose what is best, not just for today and these people present, but also for the years and generations to come. We're led to believe that if we are not for this wind project, we are not open to change. We are not green friendly. We are labeled as traditionalist, not willing to accept the realities of a changing society. Let me remind you, many of the individuals that have been most aggressive in organizing our opposition to this proposal are in their 30s and 40s. They have degrees and good jobs. We are not a bunch of country bumpkins unable to think progressively. There are many advanced degrees represented in our group. Glenn and I both have master's degree, and I have an earned doctorate in the educational fields. We have done the research and are thinking far beyond the immediate. Airports, landfills, railroad tracks, and interstate highways are all necessary for our way of life. Very few people desire to live in a close proximity to any of these, with the exception of Eugene Just.
Eugene, you got us going yesterday because you talked about living next to that railroad.
While we need and benefit from these conveniences, no one wants a landfill or an airport or a railroad track in every square section of our beautiful countryside. Not
in their own backyard.
Not in their own backyard. Think about it. Kansas already has 37 wind farms. These out-of-state investors making the big profits will not be satisfied until they can fill every square inch with wind towers.
Do we have any more speakers? Please sign the list as you come by. If you are interested in speaking, please, if you would, grab a chair over there in the reserved seats so that we can keep this process moving.
I want to make sure I give you some documentation. You guys got a pretty tough job here tonight. I want to thank you for letting me speak on behalf of us homeowners. My name's Keith May. I purchased a farm about 4 years ago over at 429 and 160th in Minnow County. It was an abandoned farm. It was pretty run down, and we spent hundreds of hours cleaning this place up. Kind of nuts, isn't it, to try to save a farm, but I did. And
we built our retirement home on this place and hope to retire there. So, you know what's ironic is, guess where my family farm sits? Reno County. Amazing, isn't it? Now, they voted wind towers down there, and I hope the commission approves not to do it there. And I hope you do the same here. What a great, beautiful county you have. And to destroy it with such a structure. So, one of my biggest concerns is what's going to happen when we overpopulate this area with a bunch of wind towers. These are huge structures. They're 500 feet tall, and they're going to put a lot of them in per section. So, you know what this is going to do to everyone's property values, marketable property values in this county. It doesn't matter if you're for the towers or not. It's going to impact them dramatically. So I handed you a bunch of studies, and I'm not going to go through every one of them here, but you know, the overall impact is somewhere around 20 to 65%, depending on the situations, or the area, or how close the tower sits to your place. So these things, you know, you really ought to reach out and contact an appraiser who does this for a living, who can advise you what the impact of this is going to be to your property. So I did. I reached out to a guy in Texas that does it for a living. I liked him because he was a cattle and ranch man, and he'd done it for forever. He's been in the business, and he said, so he's a very sympathetic guy, and I give you a copy of his report. There's a lot of pretty pictures in it. So what's kind of ironic about this report that I handed you is he was telling me about it. If you look at the back page, you ask for written permission to use his presentation. So it's like, out of courtesy, I called the guy. So he described a guy just like me, bought a small acreage place and built a retirement home on it, and it was surrounded by wind turbines. And he was hired by that owner to go in and appraise what the impact of the wind turbines are to his place. So the main reason for that, for him being hired, was that the guy was the property owner was suing the county because they come back to him, even though he had turbines on his place, because they wanted to change his residential place to a commercial property. Can you imagine the tax impact that's going to cause? And you go, well, that's kind of odd. Now, why would the county have to go back and do that? Is it because the funds coming from the wind towers wasn't what they thought it was, or, you know, I don't know. So, you know, all I can ask is that, you know, you need to really weigh into this very carefully. And somehow you got to guarantee and protect my property values. In fact, if you look at some of the findings in from these auditors or appraisers, in their case studies, they say you should really require some kind of guarantee that market value of properties are not going to decrease. So what are you guys going to do to protect me? Do you think I can afford to invest the money in the place that I did and take 10%, 20%, 30%, or more loss on a property? That's what this is going to do. And believe me, a structure like this is going to impact the market value. So, what are you going to do, and what are you going to do about setbacks? the setbacks today are not substantial. So what's my setback requirement?
Sir, can I ask you to wrap up your comments?
Sure can. In fact, we just got to the end of it. So my setback requirement is, I don't want to see them ever. Don't put them in, and don't impact all my neighbors with it. And let's not get in a fight over all this between all of us. So, you're my neighbor. You are. Where do you live? A mile from me? I'd like to still keep waving. So, thank you.
With the lingering questions and concerns regarding impact of wind energy and wind energy development that we're hearing here tonight, do we risk the well-being of our community?
Can I interrupt you and state
Yes.
your name and your address, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. My name is Jennifer May. I live at 429 160th in Hillsborough. We're in the Minnow Township, and so we're not currently in the footprint, but proposed to be. And I want to thank you all for your time and the respect that you've shown everyone here tonight and last night. My question is, what is the cost to our community? What is the cost to the individual, to the family, if we allow the private corporation to make a multitude of life-impacting decisions about land that we own? There has been a growing backlash against industrialized wind projects in rural America. Since 2015, about 170 government entities from Maine to California have moved to reject or restrict wind projects. The backlash isn't limited to the U.S. In 2010, the European Platform Against Wind Farms had about 400 members in 20 countries. Today it has grown, tripled in membership, and is in 31 countries. In Canada, more than 90 Ontario townships have declared themselves unwilling hosts to wind projects. Denmark has not added to their wind energy capacity since 2013. Some things we can learn from the mistakes of industrialized wind energy. I'm going to reference an article found in the Des Moines Register, November 21st, 2018. It's titled, "Neighbors in Eastern Iowa Fight to Bring Down Turbines in Wind." I'll highlight some points. They spent $11 million to invest in 3 turbines. This was the second time nationally a judge has ordered turbines to be deconstructed, in a first for Iowa. Land use permits were found to be illegal and void because they were put up without proper zoning. Cost of deconstruction was $450,000 for the 3 turbines. The turbines sat near 36 lots the city of Fairbanks had approved for residential development. The case had been contested in court for 4 years, and some residents had complained about nausea and sleep deprivation due to the turbines. This case could help set a precedent for the rights of inhabitants near industrialized wind production sites. Just a few points. Cost required to build an infrastructure. In 2013, Texas completed its competitive renewable energy project, adding 3,600 miles of transmission lines to promote wind farms, costing taxpayers $7 billion. I'm not going to go through all of these because some of these have been discussed tonight, but I think the one that stands out most for me is that for every 10 megawatts of wind power added to the system, 8 megawatts of reliable power must be dedicated. What will the industrialized wind projects look like 20 years down the road when our kids and grandkids have to deal with the deteriorating structures below and above ground? We will one day realize I'm asking these questions, will we one day realize we have adversely impacted our environment? Or will an abrupt awakening happen when we see the heavy equipment move in with bulldozers, trenching machines, concrete trucks, enormous cranes? Will we miss the landscape we are so fortunate to enjoy today? Please ask yourself if you are willing to, I just ask for your consideration of the integrity of our land. And I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
My name is Randy Collett. I live at 420 and a half East Main here in Marion. Full disclosure, I presently serve as the Economic Development Director for the City of Marion. My concern with this overall project is addressing an issue that I have not heard anybody talk about. We have acknowledged out-migration of our county. Many of the times, the reason for that out-migration is for one reason and one reason only. It's the level of our property taxes that are presently assigned to each and every parcel of land in Marion County. I would tell you that I've had my share of discussions with Ms. Novak, Mr. Becker, Mr. Dalkey, and most of the time they've been very congenial, but very pointed in that we have to do something about the property tax level that we currently have assigned here in Marion County. Lacking an ability to control spending, then it becomes a revenue source. And unless or until we find a way to get more money from the real estate, which tracks right to real estate tax increases, property tax increases, we are not going to be able to bend that curve. It is now a barrier to companies coming to Marion County interested in relocating here. My counterpart in Hillsborough, Anthony Roy, and myself have had many conversations about the level of property taxes and the barrier it is presently to economic development in this county. So it's a tough question. I don't envy your position. I empathize with the people who don't necessarily want to be looking at wind turbines, but I do see this as one method to help us all realize the benefit of either capturing property taxes at the level they are now, or potentially even reducing them. And for that reason, and that reason only, I'm in support of this development. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amy Soye. You heard my husband talk earlier. We live at 1426 Pawnee in Marion. We're outside of the footprint, and I'm also against. I'm against for other reasons, but I'd also like to just state we are all a community and we're all neighbors here. And somebody's house south of my house was vandalized last night while she was at this meeting. A big red X was put on her log home. And I just feel like as far as us being neighborly, that's obviously not neighborly. I don't know who did that. So I'd like to just say that when you say you want to do unto others as you want done unto yourself, we're all residents of Marion County, and we want to be our small town neighbors, farmers and ranchers. We wave to one another as we drive down the road, and we all still should be able to do that, I feel like. So one thing that I've asked as we've kind of gone through all of this is why can't we get more back for all the counties in Marion? Why can't we get 25% off their electricity bill for all Marion County residents? That would give kind of everybody something, if they're going to have to look at it, something as an added benefit. Move the footprint back, but then also why can't they just pave the roads that they're going to be traveling on a lot? There's just different things that we haven't forced and haven't asked. They're wanting to come here for a reason, and it would be fine if the Marion County residents, all of us, are to benefit in some avenue. So that's all I had to say, but I do think that you should put it to a vote and let the residents decide. Thank you.
My name is Randall M. Eitzen. I would live in the edge of this proposed wind turbine project at 1224 100th Ring Road. That is where, I would live and farm and ranch on the southwest part of the proposed project. Also farm and ranch south and west of the proposed project also. The land that I own and rent and partner with, amounts to about 12,000 acres. When Expedition Wind was working on the project, they sure didn't want to come talk to me right away. Maybe they thought I wasn't of a big enough farmer. Maybe they thought I didn't like wind turbines. I don't know. But when they did come talk to me, depending on what map you would have looked at, I could have had somewhere between 7 and 10 turbines, and they were going to give me like $5,000 each. I thought, who do they think that they're talking to? But apparently there must have been, some people thought that was a pretty good deal. At least they did when they signed up. Now, since they've signed up, some of them have gotten out of their contracts. Apparently some of them read the contract after they signed it. You know, hey, that's all right. But I know we have heard Pat talk about his happy people and happy cows once the wind turbines come in. He wants between 80 and 100. Oh, no, that's right. He said yesterday, now he wants between 70 and 90 of them, between 380, 500 tall. Okay. And it's going to make the community so many dollars. Well, where I went to school, if they put up 80 turbines at $5,000 a piece, that's not even a half. That's only $400,000 in the whole deal. Well, last year, just soybeans alone I combine more than 2 times the dollar amount. Not to say anything about wheat or the corn or livestock or hay I raised. It just doesn't seem like a whole lot. I don't know. Maybe it really is. I went to school at Hillsborough, so maybe I'm wrong. I just really think everybody here has a lot to be thankful for. We all have way more than what we deserve. Why do we want a few crumbs from a company from Minnesota? It doesn't make sense. One thing I have heard, people say that we had a lot of people that have been leaving the community because there isn't any jobs. I'd like to hire some people. I would say the main reason people leave the community, it's not because we don't have jobs. It's because they have jobs working for their dad, for their uncle, and they see the bright lights of the city, and they want to go there. But 10, 15 years after that, has evidence from Jeremy, Will, and Stacy, they came back. I guess I would say you probably figured out I don't want wind turbines. I would just say that I would hope that only over my cold, dead, still body will those things cast a shadow on the ground I will walk on. Thank you very much for your time, and good evening.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? This will be the last opportunity. I mean, when we wrap these up, after we close the public speaking spot part, the public will not be able to comment again.
I'm Marlene Knightson, and I've lived in Marion County for over 60 years, and now I live in Hillsborough, and I used to live on the farm. And why are we trying to ruin our countryside with all these, with the noise and with all the sightly turbines? Have any of the expertise lived in Marion County to do some of their studying and all of that stuff that they do? Another thing, what's going to happen when all those turbines go haywire? Who's going to clean it up? I guess simple thing is, why ruin the countryside with the noise and the sightly turbines? If we keep them out of here, look at all the trouble that would save.
Sorry, yeah, you'll have to
Forgot
hold
about the mic. Ron Savage, live at 2207 100th Florence. Our residence is outside of the current footprint, but we do have land within the footprint that is leased. Thank you guys again for your service like everybody else has on both sides. This is long hour, short pay kind of job. I think we all realize that, and appreciate your effort. I wish to express my full support for the Expedition Wind project and for the approval of the proposed CUP. Marion County has already felt a limited economic benefit from this project through lease payments, fuel, lodging, and other conveniences purchased. Upon commencement of construction and subsequent operation of this project, I do believe there will be substantial benefit felt by Marion County and the communities within for years to come. I was here last night as well, just kind of sitting back and watching. Much of what I thought I might want to say in favor of this project was already said by other supporters, and a little bit was said again tonight. So I'll kind of try to be as brief as possible. Mostly there were a few things mentioned that I'd like to comment upon, and I'll try to keep that to 2 or 3. First, the subject of tax credits and subsidies came up. Wind energy producers are far from the only recipients and the only people who are eligible for tax credits and subsidies. Just domestically, aside from wind energy, other types of energy production also receive these credits and subsidies or are eligible for them. Further, and I think it comes closer to home for many, there are housing subsidies, there are education subsidies, there's subsidized health care and insurance, and yes, there's even ag subsidies. I dare say very few people in this room have not directly or at least indirectly received benefit of subsidies. Now, subsidies themselves are a very huge topic. I personally would be happy if they all went away because I'd like to see the size and scope of government decrease. But that's not the way things are. And honestly, the subject of subsidies is not relevant to this CUP process tonight. Secondly, one lady, and I'm sorry I did not catch her name, and I don't want to be disrespectful by taking a stab at it, so she was up here last night and had spoke of their dreams of their retirement home and their hopes to build. And they were concerned with the wind farm, or the proposed wind farm, and their plans to build this retirement home were in jeopardy. I don't like speaking in public. I don't like ruffling feathers, and I don't want to try to ruffle feathers, but the honest thing is the only limitation on somebody outside of the wind farm being able to build is one they set upon themselves. Their ability to build upon that property has not changed. I understand their view could change, sympathize with that, but their ability to work upon their property and to build upon it has not changed. Now, in continuation with this dreams thing, and it has been talked about on both sides of this issue last night and tonight, but I am a 4th generation Marion Countian, and I'm a 4th generation landowner. We have purchased land from our family, and we have purchased land and we are still working to pass it or to pay for it. My dream is that we can pass it on to another generation when we're through with it. The wind farm payments certainly will not make us rich, but they would help, hopefully, to pay ever-increasing property taxes. I'll skip my other one, other than to say prairie chickens are on the rise. Okay, people who hunt on my land will tell you that. The last thing is property rights. That's what this is about. Am I, as a landowner, do I have the right to use my property to its fullest potential for my benefit? I believe the answer to that is yes. I thank you again for your time and the opportunity to speak.
All right. Okay, my name is Brandon Butts. This is my wife, Michelle Butts. We reside at 1212 Pawnee, Peabody, Kansas, Catlin Township, and we are in footprint. Okay, where did this all begin? It began in 1992, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, a product of Earth Summit UN Conference on Environment and Development. It was labeled Agenda 21 and refers to the 21st century. It has been affirmed at subsequent UN conferences, and its aim was to achieve Global Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The 17 SDGs included number 7 and number 13 related to the purported affordable clean energy and climate action. On the surface, the various goals may sound noble. However, specifically to renewable energy, it has been debunked by ClimateGate and other studies to misrepresent of data to support their agenda. Fast forward to the politics of the matter worldwide. Suppose green energy has been heavily subsidized by governments, especially early on in Europe. However, reality has at least partially set in there, and growth onshore wind in 2018 fell by more than half in Germany and collapsed in the UK. 12 countries in the European Union failed to install a single wind turbine last year. This was due in large part by a decrease in the state aid. Over the period of 2006 to 2016, electricity prices have increased in Germany by 51%, over 100% in Denmark since 1995. So if renewable energy, solar and wind, is so much cheaper, then why did the price of electricity dramatically increase instead of decline? It appears a young German economist, Leon Hirth, may have the answer in a 2013 paper, Energy Policy. The reason: renewable energy fundamentally unreliable nature. Both solar and wind sources produce too much energy when societies do not need it, and not enough when they do. Electricity is thought of as a commodity when it is, in fact, a service, like eating at a restaurant. The price of the service, like eating out, and electricity reflect costs not only of few ingredients, but also in the preparation and delivery.
In the USA, lobbyists have been busy on federal and state level promoting green energy. The result is legislation with tax abatements, construction costs by utility companies that may be passed on in their entirety to end users or taxpayers and other perks. In Kansas, initial property tax abatements for wind turbines was for life. Then in May 2015, it was amended by SB 91 to be for only 10 years. However, with SB 91, there is an amendment that allows for future tax to be ultimately passed to the ratepayers. So who are the winners from this propagated lie of CO2 supposedly being hazardous gas and aggressive green energy development from the political heavyweights? It sure isn't the consumer or our state or county. The residents only get to see these behemoth edifices that they bury real health and environment issues. The school missed out on property tax revenue and may get a pittance via the payment in lieu of tax program or a pilot. Animosity among family members and neighbors may escalate. Even this weekend, there was vandalism and graffiti right in the middle of the footprints for the opponents. Property values may decrease, as it is hard to imagine that folks would want to move into a blighted area of a wind farm. Long-term issues no doubt dwarf the initial economic benefits. What do you do with an aging wind farm, or if technology renders them obsolete? The only obvious winner is the energy or the utility company that receives government subsidies, construction costs that will be passed on to the ratepayer. That's us, plus the unreliable nature of their service. So scrutiny should be given before a decision to move forward on such project in our area, regardless who is promoting it. The moral of the story is, don't sell your birthright or farm for a bowl of lentil soup. And I also want to note that today I spoke with the county engineer in regards to a possible historic culvert on 120th between Old Mill and Pawnee. It is in our southwest quarter. It is not even registered at Road and Bridges. Has this company drove these roads and looked firsthand at the natural springs that are flowing right now? Our domain is a diverse ecosystem. It's either going to be destroyed or overloaded. I will be in contact with the Kansas Department of Wildlife as Expedition Wind hasn't.
Also, I had a comment, or a question, I'm sorry. Global positioning satellite is what us farmers use to drive straight lines. So, in the communications, I didn't hear anything by Expedition Wind in that regard. So, everything runs on that, combines, sprayers, tractors. That was one question I had. As far as the youth and our opportunities, we all have equal opportunity. It was given to us by our founding fathers. We all have a God-given right of free choice. So, are we going to take free choice away from our youth? Thank you, commissioners. You got a long road ahead of you, and thank you very much.
My name is Lyle Lepke. I live at 1917 140th Marion. I would be in the footprint of the property, and I do have land leased to the Expedition Wind Company. I make my living talking in front of people, so I get a little nervous in front of you. I just would talk about some of the arguments that we've heard and would address those, I guess. One of them being that it's a big company out of state with outside investors. They're going to take our money from us here. As long as they can, they're going to take it back to Minneapolis, and when they can't make any money over here anymore, they're going to leave us with an empty building or empty facilities. Think about that one. We've got a John Deere store over here. It's a large company based out of state investors. When it's not profitable anymore, I'm glad they're here. I got John Deere equipment. I'm glad they're here. When it's not profitable anymore, they're going to leave us with an empty building. It's happened with another dealership already in town, unfortunately. If it wasn't for large companies and out-of-state investors, where does investment come from? We could look locally, interior within our county, but to find the kind of money that's being invested in Marion County has not come from within our county. It has to come from somewhere else. We're not going to find it right here. At least we haven't. We've tried. We've looked. We hope. We wait. I don't want my taxes to go towards subsidies. I heard Ron speak about that just a little bit ago, too. Don't want my taxes paying for a wind farm and wind energy. My research shows that coal and oil are subsidized 7-to-1 over renewable energy. 7-to-1. Let's touch on subsidies just a little bit more. The aircraft industry in the state of Kansas is sales tax free. Boeing needs that. I can assure you that every airplane and every airplane part sold in Kansas is sales tax free. They might build them somewhere else, but they're sold here because it's a, 8% advantage? Like Ron says, our subsidies just go and go. Renewable energy is just a small part of it. We all benefit from it. Nike Corporation gets $2 billion a year in subsidies. Need it or not, they get $2 billion a year. And we can look up and down Main Street, Marion. It looks really nice. We got new sidewalks and new curbs. I don't know for sure how much the city of Marion is paying for it. 10%? I'm sure someone in Savannah, Georgia, or Minneapolis, or Denver is real happy that their tax dollars are going for new concrete in downtown Marion. Subsidies are part of our government's way to share. Part of our government's way to share. Another argument is that the production that's produced here gets shipped out of state. It goes elsewhere. It's not used here. We produce cattle here. We produce wheat, corn, milo, soybeans. Thank God glad we can ship some of it to other states, other areas, other countries. Not so much China for soybeans. Sold some cattle yesterday for about $5 a hundred less than I wanted to because of a little thing going on in Mexico right now. But anyway, I'm glad there's somebody elsewhere that can use something we produce here. Lastly, I just would talk about taxes a little bit. Our oldest son lives in Olathe, Kansas. Bought a house there about 3 years ago. And so I asked him here the other day how much his taxes were. Guess how much more his taxes are in Olathe for an equal value house here in Marion? His taxes in Olathe are half. An equal value house in Marion is double the tax than his house in Olathe. I'll just quit with that.
I'm Rex Savage, and I'm here representing Windborne Energy this evening. We were the originator of this project, and I do live at 2203 110th Florence, which is on the edge of the footprint. I do want to say good evening to you, commissioners, and thank you for sitting through this. It's long. No matter whether you're an opponent or a proponent, it is a long, long process. I think it could be beneficial to make a brief review of the history of both wind energy development in Marion County and the county's development of the regulations that govern the same. Early in the 2000s, County P&Z, of which Mr. Mueller was part at the time, showed an exceptional level of proactive thinking and responded to the growing buzz about a new rural economic development tool, the capture of kinetic energy and converting it into commercial electric product for sale. County didn't know what they thought about that, so they spent thousands of hours traveling all over this state and other states, visiting wind farms, researching the positives and the negatives of wind energy, and looking at the regulations that other counties had, which run the gamut from nothing to what we have, which is one of the most stringent set of regulations. About 2004, they actually got the regulations drafted and created an overlay district wherein a conditional use permit application for commercial development of wind energy could be presented with the presumption that it was an approved use if the application met the requirements of County P&Z. Windborne began acquiring leases in 2009. Our principals, myself and another gentleman, have an oil and gas and ag background. Oil and gas is an up and down business. Those of you that have leases on your land are well aware of that. It goes feast to famine, very akin to the cattle business and farming. We have our good years, we have our bad years. We felt we needed to be looking at something to diversify our operations, an attempt to develop a positive thing for our community, our county, and ourselves. We are a profit-motivated corporation. I make no apology for that. Our corporation is registered as a for-profit corporation, not a charity. We acquired approximately 25,000 acres of leases over several years. And through the course of several applications in front of this very board, attained enough conditional use permits to develop approximately 200 megawatts of wind capacity. Unfortunately, political interests in Topeka, without consultation of Marion County, Sedgwick County, Harvey County, Cowley County, or any of the other counties affected, determined that they would kowtow to their heavyweight donors and cut our project in two on 50 Highway. We elected to continue forward, knowing that while that proposed moratorium, voluntary moratorium, had no legal standing, it probably would affect development of the project. It did. Expedition came in and bought that part of the project not affected by the moratorium. To maintain reasonable economy of scale, they needed to acquire additional acreage out of the moratorium area to maintain a 200 megawatt project. That is the reason you are hearing this hearing tonight, not because all of us were bored and had nothing else to do. The county at various times and for various reasons amended its regulations. Most of those had nothing to do with Windborne. There are some things that we need to remember, and they've been very consistent throughout the whole process. P&Z makes its decisions on land use. They do not regulate economics. They do not regulate environment. They do not regulate aesthetics. As you were asked to earlier, please take your consideration of your factors for approval and make your decision. Thank you for your time.
Can I get a show of hands of who is planning to speak or wishes to speak yet? I see we have one more back there. We're probably going to take a quick recess here. It's been another hour and a half of comment. I think, yeah, what I was going to say is go ahead, give yours. We'll take a recess, give everybody an opportunity again, and then we'll see how we continue this meeting.
Okay. My name's Linda Kropa. I really didn't plan to speak. I'm from Harper County. We managed down there to get the trash from Wichita hauled there that you guys didn't want here in Marion County. A lot of the people I know in Harper County have not been overly excited with the benefits of that to our county down there. Also, we have some wind farms there and to the counties west. Every few years, there are new transmission lines going all over. I mean, I haven't researched it. I don't know where they're going, where they're coming from. But as a landowner here, I do feel strongly. I'm sorry, I'm getting nervous. My question is, for you landowners out here, this energy has to go somewhere. And these high-power transmission lines will probably need eminent domain to get it going where they want it. And, you know, it's easy not to think about these things, but that's what I see just driving home to Harper County over the last few years. So that is something I think people should think about. What's the long term? And the last thing is Marion has had a torn up downtown for the last few weeks, and it's looking very nice. I'm going to enjoy it. But I don't know if we can, thought on life, you don't usually get everything. And we can outmarket Marion County as this nice getaway retreat for people coming from the cities, Wichita, Kansas City, other places. You know, some people don't mind the towers, and that it is totally personal. If anybody got anything from this discussion here last night and tonight, it's a personal thing. But to spend all this money to create this getaway attitude for small town, old-fashioned values, and then you're going to have these high-powered transmission lines just running all over, I don't know if we can get that done. So the lady that spoke last night that talked about people that are coming here because they like what's here now, why don't the ones of us that feel that way, maybe we need to band together and try to come up with some good ideas for our county. Thank you.
At this time, we will take a 10-minute recess and resume at 10:17.
I do appreciate you guys holding this, and appreciate you staying so long. I really have never been...
I'm going to interrupt you. Could you please state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen Williams, 19 Lois Lane is where I live. And, you know, I've really not ever been a proponent of wind power. But I did go out to the Durham after it was all done. My husband and I drove out there. And it was really sad because, you know, it had been a really beautiful area, and now it's just dotted with these giant turbines. And then we pulled up as close as we could to one, and we listened to that horrible whooshing noise. And, you know, I've heard some people say, you know, it's their land and they can do with it what they want, but, you know, it affects everybody. We all have to look at it. I see those blinking lights from 77 when I turn to go to the lake, and I don't like it. I don't want to see it. I don't care if the blades spin magic fairy dust. I really don't enjoy looking at those things, and I don't believe in all the subsidies. I feel like that's the only thing that keeps these things going. And, you know, a lot of other people have said many great facts, and for whatever facts we have against it, I'm sure you have many facts that are for it. But, you know, the bottom line is that it isn't just about the landowner. It's about all of us that live around that, and we have to deal with it and look at it and deal with the health effects. And I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, but after I visited those turbines, I came home and I wrote a poem, and I'm going to share it with you. It's called Turbines No Thank You. I look across the vast Kansas landscape, and what do I see? Big white pinwheels as tall as a redwood tree. The view that used to be of wide open spaces is now filled with behemoths that have no faces. Just a whooshing sound all day and dark, drowning out the sounds of the meadowlark. Clean energy is what they say, to justify placing these in our soil day after day. Will they really lower our costs, or is our beautiful view destined to be lost? I, for one, am very suspect. I think in a short time we will feel regret, till we hopefully remove these objects from the ground, restore our views and vast prairie sights and sounds, putting back the farmer's field so he can have a bigger yield. The subsidies for these turbines will eventually go away. What happens to the farmer who didn't save for this day? He will be stuck with these abandoned towers, longing for his field of flowers. Let's slow down this uncertain progress, lest we make an even bigger mess. A quick buck game never ends too good. We tend to just push on, even if it's not fully understood. Leave the prairies alone and rescind this quest to harvest the Kansas wind. Of course, this is just my opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public portion of the comment. I'm also going to open up a discussion for our board. We are looking at more than an hour, probably closer to 2, with time to go. what are your thoughts on continuing this meeting, re-adjourning at another time?
I'd suggest that we find a time where we can continue so we can do it with our full energy and attention.
Anybody have any objections to that? Okay. The next issue is when is the best time? I know that the rest of this week is pretty well booked, spoken for. We do have Monday available, but we will lose one member. Anybody? I think you're gone all next week. I hate to push it farther than that week.
I understand, but I've had plans for a year.
Sure. I think we have one more presentation from the applicant before we finish up tonight. I think after that, we will probably look to recess to another day. So at that point, I will give the applicant their presentation time. Was that a 2 minutes to go or, okay.
Hi there, Commissioners. Again, Chris Olson. I'm the health consultant for Expedition Wind. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be back next week because I'm going to be in Pierce, South Dakota at a state hearing. So they've asked me to go through some of the discussion that we've heard on some of the health and setback concerns. I'll try to be brief in the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have tonight with regards to the siting, the health, sound, setbacks, sleep, and the like. So thank you for allowing me to.
Can I ask first, what's your qualifications for being in this position?
Sure, absolutely, sir. So as I put forward in the presentation to you before, I've got a PhD in environmental health I obtained over 20 years ago. I've been working in the field of environmental health, which is involving everything from contaminated sites to air quality issues. And about 10 years ago, I got the first phone call on wind turbines and siting. And at that time I said, well, wind turbines, green energy, no emissions, what's the problem? That's led down to about a 10-year journey on this. And I've published 6 scientific peer-reviewed articles in the field. I've appeared before countless county commissions and planning and zoning commissions like yourselves right across the Midwest. I've been involved in 4 projects that are now up and built in Kansas and 3 others that are in the same process. I testified in front of the Senate in North Dakota as well as in Indiana, and I was the expert retained by the Department of Health for Vermont when they were setting their setting rules. So a lot of experience and absolutely.
Everybody knows where they're coming from.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to drive at.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely, sir. And so if we go to the next slide. So first I'm going to tackle a little bit on this issue about setting back turbines from homes, but then from property lines. And what is an appropriate property line setback? So under Article 27, you do have an existing setback from your property lines. And that is for this project or for these turbines that are proposed to be just under 500 feet tall, you'd have to be set back at least 550 feet from a non-participating property line. And you also have a sound level in Article 27 that says you can't exceed 55 decibels for those non-participating property lines. And the sound report that was submitted to the Commission actually looks at both of those. No, actually, we'll go back up. We'll stay on the other slide there for a second. What we see is that the closest turbine to a property line is actually 566 feet. Most of them are set quite a further distance back, but there is one that's as close as 566 feet. And the sound level for that was modeled at 54 and change. Okay? So what I'm going to take you through is that appropriate? Is your existing ordinance appropriate? And how does that compare to other states and other counties? But also, again, remembering that for all existing non-participating homes, the ordinance says 1,320 feet, and Expedition's voluntarily looking at a condition of no more than 2,000 feet. I believe the closest non-participating home is just over 2,100 feet. And the sound level is actually not 50 decibels at that loudest one. It's actually just over 46 decibels. So we're quite a bit lower than the ordinance, which is 55 decibels. All right, so let's go to the next one. So where does this 550 feet in your Article 27. Typically, it's actually, most county ordinances or states like North Dakota or South Dakota where they actually regulate the setback to non-participating property lines, roads and the like, it's actually at 1.1 times the total height of the turbine, is usually how you see it written. In this case, you're the same. So 550 feet is 110% of the total height. So this is the technical documentation for wind turbines from GE. So this is a GE publicly available document. If you don't already have it, we can certainly provide it to you. I did go over it briefly the other night. Okay, and so we're going to come back to why the GE has put in what they did. Go to the next one. So this is the table 1 out of the GE setback recommendations. It's a little hard to read there, but it says basically on the left-hand columns, these are the distance setbacks from things like roads, structures, and the like for ice throw, blade failure, as well as tower collapse to ensure protection of public health and safety. And then you'll see on the right-hand side, they list a number of things, where to set it back. They actually suggest 1.1 times the tip height or but at a minimum 170 meters, which is just over 560 feet. So in fact, again, the closest turbine to a non-participating property line is beyond that for the project at this point. And if we go to the next slide, so where does GE come up with this? This is just a bit of a gobbledygook slide that just shows you, this is, again, all through the peer-reviewed science and engineering. Does ice get thrown from turbines? Sure it does. Mostly what happens is when a turbine ices up, the turbine stops because you get vibration in the blades. They don't want vibration in the blades. It actually harms the blades and that, so the turbines will shut down. But as the turbines are shutting down in ice conditions, you can get some ice throw. Okay? Most of it, what happens, the turbine shuts down and you get ice shed, which basically falls to the base of the turbines. So the landowners are informed, because the turbine's on a participating landowner, and the technicians are informed to stay away from the base of the turbines during that time. With this circle, what looks like a bullseye at a dartboard there, what that essentially shows is that all of the ice that was thrown from these turbines, this is actual data sitting in Sweden, where they were looking at ice throw and actually measuring the ice and where was it thrown over many projects and many years, is that it all stays within that 1.1 times tip height. So you actually, that's where they set that 550 meter, or this 1.1 times tip height, is to make sure that the ice that's going to be thrown is, again, going to stay on a farmer's field. I come from a long line of farmers, dairy farmers in Ontario, Canada. I'll tell you, in the middle of winter, during those icing conditions, you're not usually standing out in your field. I know the capping operations, that can be a little different. But I mean, does it happen? Yes, but the risk of actually getting hit by a chunk of ice coming from a turbine is very low. So that's, for ice throw, your ordinance is already protected for setting back. Next slide. This is another study that was done out of the United Kingdom for blade failure. So it was an engineering firm for the government in the UK. And what they, again, same kind of thing. The center of that bullseye is the turbine. What happens, if an entire blade comes off, it's more or less falling right near the turbine itself. But you can get little fragments of the blade coming off. This is looking at fragments. And what they see on the right-hand side there, so what is the risk? So if you do have some throw from the blade, what's the risk? Well, the risk is 1 in a billion, basically, that somebody's actually going to get hit by a piece of blade that's being thrown. It's less than the risk of being struck by lightning. Or if you take 2 airline flights a year, the plane's going to fall out of the sky. Again, with that 1.1 times tip height, it's 550 feet back from the non-participating property line. Those fragments, if thrown, will stay on the property. Next slide. Tower collapse. In fact, the first gentleman I think that spoke tonight showed this picture here of a turbine collapse. That is actually a GE turbine, similar to the make and model that they're looking at here, that did fail in Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. It's rare that it happens. Okay, again, there's 60,000 of them all over the U.S. It's rare that it happens, but it does happen. Right? These are structures. And what you can see is by the crumbling, these things don't then fall and kind of go shooting through the sky. They usually break about halfway or a third of the way up, and they come down on themselves, again, falling within the height of the turbine. So that 1.1 times tip height, or the 550 feet you already have in your ordinance, make sure that the tower is going to fall on the participating property, the landowner, the farmer who's got the turbine. It's not going to impact the neighbor. So from a public health and safety standpoint, strictly from all those safety features, your ordinance already, and the way the project's designed, already captures them. for those conditions. So that's the physical side. So now we move into the sound side. So just very briefly, this is a list of common sounds. For example, the gentleman that was playing Enter Sandman, Metallica, I was actually at the Metallica concert in 1992 when the lead singer caught fire at the end of Enter Sandman. It's another funny aside. That was 85 decibels. While we were sitting here, little sound meter out, it was 85 decibels. And again, you heard somebody else earlier today say, every 10 decibel increase, it's on a logarithmic scale, so every time you go up to 10 decibels, it essentially doubles the sound you're hearing. Okay? My voice through the microphone right now is, again, give or take 80 decibels, 75 to 80. What we're talking about at the property line is no more than 55. In fact, if you stand right underneath the base of the turbine, you're somewhere around 55 or 60 when it's fully operating and humming. You can carry on a normal conversation right at the base of the turbine. You don't need to yell, you don't need to do that. So how do we look at this for in terms of enjoyment of property? Because there's a lot of questions on enjoyment of property. Don't want to have the ruining of my property and not be able to be there. Your 55 decibel sound limit at the property line is actually very conducive again. And it's not that every property line is going to have 55 decibels. In fact, most of them are much lower than that, again, from setbacks. But to give you some ideas, so again, at the homes, we're talking about no more than 50. And on that scale, it's the quiet suburb. It's a conversation at home without a microphone. Most conversations about 60, 65. Okay, so if you're sitting in your house, everything's shut off, the TV, the stereo, kids are locked in the basement, you're just sitting there, just the noise from your air conditioner or your furnace or the fridge in the other room, you're somewhere between 40 and 50 decibels inside your home anyway. I keep it at 50 outside, even with the windows open. We're looking is to protect sleep and a good night's sleep. So as you can see, all the way up to the top there, I like hunting deer with a 30-06, and that's 170 decibels. That's why we wear hearing protection, right? But so it is a scale, and we do see that when we're at 50 decibels or less at the exterior homes, and again, remember the loudest non-participating home was at 46 decibels out of the sound report that you folks were provided. So we're even below what, we're about 10 decibels below what the ordinance says. Okay, if we go to the next one. So in terms of, this is the sound contour map out of that sound report. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but it certainly includes, and I understand the concern around some of the landowners who own property within the project that are surrounded by turbines. What we see is that, okay, at all the non-participating property lines, we're going to be 55 or less. In fact, for the vast majority of the property itself is going to be under 50. So that's what we're saying. You're not going to have to restrict, people if they want to build a new home, if they want to sever off a quarter section for the grandkids or the kids to come build their house or build another house on their property. It's something that I would encourage that the company, if somebody wanted to build a new home, the project's up in the building, often what we see is that they come to the owner of the project and say, we want to build a home on the property, and then you get them to model and show you, and here's what the sound level will be across your property, and allow them to look at that as they're then deciding where to place their homes. But it shouldn't restrict anybody's building in this area. Next slide. So that's kind of the setbacks to the property lines. I'm going to move a little bit to talk about some of the issues you heard on health. I did give a quick presentation. We're constrained from time. I'm not going to go too much into this. Happy to answer any questions. Candidly, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, siting of turbines in some counties and some states was 1,000 feet and more or less an unlimited sound level. It's too close to people's homes. So that's where we do, and we've learned in the US, we've learned in Europe, we've learned in Canada, we do have 60,000 turbines. There are turbines that are too close. There's also turbines that mechanically have failed, gearboxes are screwed up, they're creating too much noise. Those things need to be fixed. So where you have your county ordinance at 1320, that's appropriate, it's pretty much industry standard. Your sound level, candidly, is probably a little high on the high side with the 55 decibels. It's encouraged by the fact that they're going to stick to 50 and less, and certainly around 46 for the non-participating. These are two of the main ones. We've heard some of these over the last couple of nights. Wind turbine syndrome, vibroacoustic disease. If we go to the next slide. So you don't have to just take my word for it, even though I've been working in the industry for 10 years, done a lot of help with siting and what's an appropriate sound level. This was a brief excerpt from Massachusetts Department of Health, Department of Environment, commissioned an independent study by a bunch of PhDs, MDs, and engineers in Massachusetts area that had nothing to do with the wind industry, and that's their conclusion on these allegations, even from 2012. No set of health effects that can be characterized as wind turbine syndrome. that mean that we don't care about people's health or we don't need to be concerned? No, you do have to put those proper sound levels, the 2,000-foot setback in to make sure that we are being protected. Next one. So again, a little bit of the science. I talked to you about the Health Canada study last night. The reason I'm telling you about this study is that we use it right around the world. Over 1,200 people surveyed, a couple of years living around wind turbines, 4,000 data points of sound, modeled and measured outside of people's homes. Lots of peer-reviewed literature. So if you go to the next one. Sleep is the most important thing for any noise source. Okay? If you disrupt sleep, you guys have all been through, probably even the last couple nights, where you don't get a good night's sleep for a couple days. You start shutting down. You're not going to eat well. Well, you can't have that going on for 30 years. So the noise limits that we set for wind farms, as well as gas-fired plants, coal plants, and like all those noise emission limits that we set for people's homes are to make sure that people can get a good night's sleep. This is the paper from Dr. Michell out of the Health Canada report, where they actually fitted people out with what we call actimeters, basically a fancy Fitbit where it measures the actual sleep patterns of people in the homes. And what they found was whether they were close to the turbines at 820 feet or they were as far out as about 7 miles, there was no difference in people's sleep patterns close or far away with the sound levels that we're looking at here, 46 decibels, which is essentially what we've got for these non-participating homes. So we're not going to impact sleep. And that's the key. That's what leads to the cardiovascular disease, that leads to all the other health effects from noise. It starts and ends with the sleep. Go to the next one. I'm not going to go through all this, but the myriad of health concerns that you heard about over the last couple of days, these are the ones that not only Health Canada, the Europeans have been studying, the Australians alike, but you'll see, if you and it is in the report that I provided you folks, but all of these things, they did look at them, again, close to, farther away. There's no difference between those living close to the turbines and further out. No, at that 46 and less level, which is what you're looking at here, so therefore we think it's a good level to set the sound limit at. Next one. With the Enter Sandman song was the mental health component. Absolutely. It was a big part. So the quality of life, mental health, absolutely gets tied into this. A lot of time and effort. Again, this is one of the multiple studies that have been produced by research groups around the world. And again, so they looked at physical health, psychological, social relationships, and environment. There's a World Health Organization standard questionnaire that one does to look at all of these things. And what they concluded was there's no effect, again, those living close by, those living far out, whether you oppose the project, whether you support the project, whether you're paid or not, up to that 46 to 50 kind of decibel level. Next slide. So, just kind of a brief conclusion, it was the same slide that I put up last night. There certainly is a lot of literature in this area. If we were here about 10 years ago, there were about 14 papers. There's now well over 80, actually we're over 100 scientific papers. There are some of them that were raised by the veterinarian site. There are a few opinion pieces and limited studies that suggest concern. Those are not the bulk of the scientific literature. When you weigh all those scientific papers, when you look at proper setbacks and siting guidance, I would put you board members that both your Article 27 and then what Expedition Wind's committing to you to go to the 2,000 feet to the closest home, so almost double what you've got as a setback distance, no more than 50 decibels, and right now it's modeled at 46 for the non-participating homes, and no more than 30 hours of shadow flicker. Again, shadow flicker is not a health concern. It certainly can be an annoyance or nuisance issue. You saw the Wisconsin shadow flicker video the other night. Again, I don't know if you noticed, but that's a home, and I think I was saying before, it's got a number of turbines surrounding that home that are 1,000 feet. The video is from 2008, I believe it is. Again, there's no question that house has way more than 30 hours of shadow flicker a year. So by limiting these things, both your ordinance already is protective, and the additional measures that I think you should make Expedition Wind hold themselves to in your conditional permit, you can write them right in and have them agree that this 2,000 feet, 50 decibels, and the 30 hours of shadow flicker, it's a well-cited project and will not have health impacts for residents of the county. I believe that's it for the formal presentation. Again, I'm sorry that I had to do this to you tonight. I just won't be able to be here next week, so I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Does anybody have anything for him?
I do. Can you talk a little bit about the low
The low frequency noise and infrasound, yes. Can you, Jessica, can you pull up the presentation from last night. So I did have a number of slides on that. I think it's just probably easier to walk through there. So again, what was going on in the debate about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we had sort of nailed down what the audible or the dBA level should be, and then focus shifted towards low frequency noise and infrasound. Is that maybe something we need to be concerned about? And in fact, one of the research papers that I worked on with my colleagues specifically is on, if you set a 50 decibel A-weighted sound level, does that also protect for the infrasound low frequency noise? And then what we see, if you can just kind of go to the low frequency noise section of that, and then we hit the next one. All right, we'll get this up. All right, you go ahead and play with that, and I'll just answer the question. So what we do know, certainly we know that there's low frequency noise and infrasound from these turbines. And what the focus of the study that most of us were doing over the last sort of, I'd say, 5 years and published on is that if you do have these 1,000-foot, 2,000-foot setbacks, is that sufficient to protect the low frequency noise and infrasound? And what we see is that certainly at the 2,000 feet, even at 1,000 feet, which is where most of the studies are done, but at 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet, can I pick up the signature? Not me, but can the acoustics people with their fancy equipment and microphone? They can. We can detect what the infrasound low frequency noise is, just like we can from the audible. But it's a level that is well below anything that poses a health impact. So if we keep going down through, go next, get through all this. Let's go to so stop there for a second. So this is the study that I put in front of you. This is a German state study. So it was the German government that did this study. What they essentially did was they spent a lot of money. It's about a 300 some odd page report, but there's a brief summary on my side. What they did was they measured infrasound low frequency noise from turbines at 300 meters or 1,000 feet from a turbine in a field where there was no home. If we go to the next one. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some sense of this graph. So infrasound is everything on 20 hertz and below. So the sound, the audible sound kind of goes from about 200 or about 20 to 30 up to the tens of thousands. So that's the sound that we're hearing. Infrasound is 20 hertz and below, so it's below a level that we would normally detect. You would literally, I'd have to put you in a lab with a bunch of grad students and crank up the infrasound level so high that you could then actually be able to perceive and hear it. If you get to that level, that's sort of off the charts, that 110, 120 level. Nothing we ever experience in nature, even with mechanical stuff, that causes some significant effects. So what you see is that pink band that sort of runs across, that is the turbine infrasound, the range of infrasound, and then low frequency noise is 20 hertz and above. So the lowest key on the piano, so if you're playing the piano, you're starting to play Jaws down at the bottom end there, that is in the low frequency range of around just about 26, 27 hertz. So that, to give you an appreciation, that's low frequency, the low sounds. But that pink band is the level in decibels of low frequency and infrasound. And it ranges, so let's say if we pick sort of on the left-hand side around that 1 or 1.6 hertz, it ranges from about 50 up to about 75 or so. That green line that runs kind of through the pink, that's the turbine shut off, and that's just the infrasound low frequency noise from the wind itself. So wind actually generates quite a bit of low frequency noise in infrasound. So you can see that the wind itself, sort of on the left side where the green's right at the top where the pink is, there's as much infrasound or infrasound as there is in the wind, even when the turbine's off. And then, yeah, you get a little bit more infrasound and low frequency noise if we come over to the right from the turbine than you do the wind. For all of us, or any of you that drove over tonight in your cars, that gray line that sort of starts on the left around 95 and then it kind of comes across, that's the infrasound and low frequency noise in your car with the stereo shut off. It's all around us, it's everywhere. If I stop talking again like I was trying to do the other night, just to kind of hum off the machine here, the air conditioner, we've got about the same amount of low frequency noise and infrasound in the room from here. That red line at the top that kind of starts at 120 and then kind of comes down, that's some of the international guideline levels for infrasound that exist out there. Not for wind turbines specific, but general sources. So yes, infrasound low frequency noise is emitted from turbines, but again, similar to if we cap the A-weighted sound at this 50 decibels, we set homes, this is 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet back, the levels are so low that it's well below anything that impairs sleep, that impairs health, causes headaches, any of those issues. If you just flip to the next slide, And that's just the paper that we published a couple of years ago that says essentially what I just told you, Commissioner. I hope, does that help clarify a bit, or?
I've got another question. You said through your sound study that you're at 560 feet, you're at 46 decibels. Can you speak to what happens to that audible sound, say if you double that distance?
Yeah, certainly. So just to be clear though, the 560 feet, that's to the property line, and that was about 54 decibels. And then, so at 2,000 feet, the loudest at 2,000 feet was 46. But when you look at, if you looked at the sound report, I believe you guys have a copy, the commission has a copy of the sound report that was filed with the application. If you were to look through there, I can give you a sort of an appreciation that, you know, most of the homes, of non-participating homes, are below 45 decibels, and they're even, you know, the vast majority are below 40. Again, because we're not, Expedition Wind's not trying to site these projects so they're 2,000 feet from everybody's home. In fact, most of the are, you know, a mile, half mile or more back. If you go from, so 2,000 feet gives you about 45 decibels. If you look at the participating landowners in there, where they're about 1,500 feet, because they've even set more or less than 1,500 feet on their participants, that's where you're going to be closer to the 50 decibels. So that 500-foot distance takes you from about 50 decibels at the participating homes down to about 45 if you're at 2,000 feet. If you're to go out then a further distance, you're going to get, but again, even if you're at 2,000 feet, because what happens with the sound report, and actually, Jesse, if you want to flip up that slide on the sound report that just has the contours, essentially what the sound modelers do is if we use the nice reporter here in the front as a home, and then you folks were all turbines, and then the folks all around are behind here were turbines, the sound report, actually the sound modeling that's done, imagines that the wind's coming at the worst case scenario, worst wind speed, from all directions, from all turbines, and the sound, which is not going to happen, obviously. Tornado, that's a whole different story, but you know, you're not going to get that swirling of noise to the house. But so that sound report's assuming that all the turbines, so if you've got multiple turbines around a home at a 2,000 feet or 3,000 feet, it's going to be a little higher than somebody who's on the edge of the project, outside of the boundary, where yeah, they might be 2,000, 3,000, half mile back, but the sound level will be a little bit lower. So essentially, if you get out to half mile or so, you're going to get a couple decibel drop. So it does drop fairly rapidly as you go, but again, the key is here you're at 2,000 feet to those homes, and you're give or take 46 or less, so well within the range. Certainly of other counties here in Kansas and the other projects that I've worked on, and you know, in the Midwest where we have other state jurisdictions like Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, and the like.
What? Have there been any studies or reports on what we call, I would call non-audible sound, something below 70?
Yeah, again, if that's that infrasound, so that graph that I was just taking you through, if you want to just pull that back up, everything below 20 is that infrasound, the non-audible sound. So those are the studies that we were focusing on a lot, because candidly, they're not usually measured around wind farms or any other noise source for that matter. So we had a pretty good appreciation for what they would be, but back around, I'd say 2012, 13, the Australians started measuring it. We started measuring it here in the US, measured it in Canada. And so there's, you know, give or take 15 or so papers now that have been published that show that sound, you can't hear that infrasound. The threshold for hearing for that infrasound, that red line, if you were to take that another 10 decibels up, that's actually the hearing threshold for infrasound. So that guideline is set below even the hearing threshold for the infrasound.
What are the most restrictive setbacks that you've experienced or that you can find that are functioning with a wind farm in other locations? I mean, we've talked about what we have here. What are you finding in other areas?
Yes, certainly you've heard a lot about different counties and jurisdictions that have said, you know, 1 mile or 2 mile, or those are essentially what we call exclusionary zoning, where you just can't possibly site a project. You know, you can't be anywhere in the U.S. where you're not going to find somebody who may not be participating on the boundary of that. For example, Lancaster County in Nebraska that was raised, and I did work with Nebraska County a little while ago. For their non-participants, they are candidly at, I believe it's 35 decibels and a mile back, because you have to be a mile back to get there. there's not a single project there, nor, I'll bet you dollars to no one's will there be. For the participants, they actually allow 50 decibels and 1,500 feet. But you can't possibly build a project where in that county. Common setbacks in the Midwest now would be, for those that have undergone ordinance changes in that, range somewhere between about 1,400 or 1,500 feet and up to 2,000 feet. So that's why I think if you look at what Expedition Wind did when they started setting these setbacks, although you got 1320, which is also fairly common, most developers these days are not going to set anything closer than about 1,500 feet and 50 decibels. I actually won't work on projects where the sound level at participating or non-participating homes is over 50 decibels. So if you look at North Dakota, for example, it's at 50 decibels and 1,400 feet as a state. There are individual counties within North Dakota that have greater setbacks. Again, typically tend to be 1,500 out to 2,000 feet if they are greater setbacks. So the setback that you have in the ordinance is probably a little bit on the low side, but where the project's got that 2,000 foot setback. Beyond that, and there are counties where there is over 2,000 feet, and you can sometimes, for example, there are some limited number, but a county that might have a 2,500 foot setback, you're really then talking about a county that is very sparsely, very sparsely populated. So 2,000 is actually kind of on the kind of high side, if you will, where a lot of projects in the Midwest will be at that 1,500 feet and give or take 50 decibels.
So with the project that we have before us listed at 2,000 feet, and with the option of resiting the turbines, what assurance do we have that those constraints will remain when turbines are resited in the final plan?
So Commissioner, what I would put to you, and this is, I don't care what the client has to say, I'm not even looking at them, what I would put to you is because they have committed to you, and I'm standing up here talking to you on what they've told me they're going to do, I'd say if it's put in as a condition, you got to be 2,000 feet away from the closest participant, non-participant, and you got to be under 50 decibels, that when final siting's done, that's submitted to your planning administrator and to this commission, it must be not for approval, but that you put it in as a condition, you have to be that, and that report has to be submitted to the county that verifies, not for debate or anything else, but verifies that what you put in your condition, 2,000 feet and 50 decibels, that you get those engineering reports that say we're 2,001 feet or whatever it is, and we are under 50 decibels, and that those then go. Typically, what would happen is they go to the county planner, the administrator, they review them and sign off and say, okay, they've been done by third-party firms to confirm. But certainly, it's a common condition that requires a final report. Again, not for debate, but that final report submitted, and that if they're beneath that, then they'd be out of compliance with the CUP. In my experience, that's the kind of language.
We wouldn't be looking for any variance to that if not participating. You want to repeat that? You want to say it in the microphone?
Okay, so Pat, this is one of those times I'm going to actually let you say it, or I'll let Jesse say it. How about that?
No, it is important to commit to this, and we understand the importance of it. We put the 2,000 non-participating setback together purposely, and with a final approval, that and the 50 decibel maximum level sound, we would commit to that for all non-participating landowners. We would be looking at as low as 1,500 for participating landowners. So.
And that's also very common where you'd have participating landowners who've obviously signed the waivers and they've signed and they know what they're getting into, that you'd have a shorter setback and sound level.
Does anybody else have any more questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I apologize for keeping you here a little later tonight.
I think at this time, we will recess to Monday, June 10th at 7 p.m. in this room to continue the applicant's presentation and our staff and board discussion.